too. And one guy's got 12 tour wins. Gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, is it not?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. You look good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
We have officially made it to Friday, a snowy Friday here in the Quad Cities. Happy January 10th. Matt Randazzo, you're watching Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Thanks for sticking with us the entire week. We've survived the first week. We had an internet outage yesterday. I think I popped us on when I wasn't supposed to now, but we've survived. We got another great show for you. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody who has been taking part in the show. We have officially made it to 500 subscribers, actually 505 as we speak. So thank you for letting that happen. Make sure you tell your friends about it. Please tell them to subscribe as well. Also like and rate the podcast. It's been a good first week. A lot of familiar faces: Pat Anger, Cole Rusk, Jess Settles, Chasen Randall, Julian Vandervelde, Jake Kidwell. I got yelled at yesterday because I didn't mention Tom Kakert, and I know I'll get yelled at if I don't mention John Marks. So it's been a fun first week. We got a great show for you tonight. Coming up, or should I say today, coming up in a matter of moments, the tournament director of the John Deere Classic and a good friend of mine, Andrew Lehman, will be joining me live in studio. Also coming up later in this hour, we'll catch up with Casey Kreiter from the New York Giants, the Central DeWitt standout, having another great season, 9 seasons in the NFL. He's been a Pro Bowler. We'll talk to him about football, life in the NFL, and how long he wants to play in the NFL. I think the numbers might surprise you. So we'll have Casey Kreiter coming on later in hour number 1. Then in hour 2, I've also been yelled at this week because a lot of people don't like the fact that I've had a lot of Iowa. I've had some Illinois, but we haven't touched enough on Iowa State. So coming up, we'll talk with Jake Brend. He is a sportscaster at WOI in Des Moines. He was also just named the Sportscaster of the Year in the state of Iowa. Great young dude, knows a ton about the Cyclone, so we'll talk with them about Matt Campbell and his connection with maybe interviewing with the Bears. We'll also talk about the Iowa State football season, and we'll also talk some Iowa State hoops. They're third in the nation. They're really, really good. So a lot of Cyclone talk in hour number 2, so we got a lot to get to. A couple sports headlines. It was the first semifinal of the college football playoffs yesterday. Notre Dame fans in the Quad Cities very happy. They will play for a national championship coming up in a couple of weeks as they knocked off, help me with who they play last night.
Penn State.
Thank you. Penn State 27-24. The big news, I think, locally is Charles Jugosall, who went to Alleman, started the bowl game last year, was in line to start this year at left tackle, tore his pectoral muscle early in the season, thought he'd be out for the year. Well, he's gotten healthy recently. He's been on special teams. He went in yesterday, played a lot on the offensive line at guard, played extremely well. They actually talked about him on the broadcast as well. So congratulations, Charles Jugosall, playing for a national championship with Notre Dame coming up in about a week and a half. So we'll have Charles Jugosall on the show. We'll get the big fella to come out to the house coming up after he maybe wins a national championship coming up in just a week and a half. Also, Iowa and Illinois renewed their rivalry on the hardwood for the ladies, and it was Shauna Green and the Illini picking up an impressive victory at home, 62-57. So Illinois getting back on track. They've been playing some good basketball of late. Iowa finding that life without Caitlin Clark isn't always going to be easy. It's still a really good basketball team, but the days of just showing up and beating teams no longer exist in Iowa City. We'll talk about the Iowa women's basketball team with our first guest, and we'll join him right now because he's a Hawkeye fan. Believe it or not, he's a Cyclone grad. This is true, correct?
Yeah. 2006 Cyclone grad, but fly my black and gold proudly.
So, and you go to a lot of Iowa women's basketball games. We'll talk about them in a second. But Andrew Lehman joins us now. You're just as handsome, off the golf course as you are on the golf course. Thanks for coming out, buddy.
You know what? What an awesome week. Really just happy for you and proud of you and taking this leap of faith. But I did get here early. I was hoping for maybe a little hair and makeup. And
none needed.
Here I am in my socks after commenting on day one.
I love it because that's the big thing. I got a text on day one from Andrew saying, I'm not taking my shoes off. And then I got up this morning and I went outside. I'm like, it's snowing. Like I don't care. My wife's in Phoenix, so like we can do whatever. But like, yeah, that's the thing I probably was gonna get from her was like, is his snowy shoes on? So you do have a nice sock selection though.
Thanks. I wasn't really worried about your concerns with my shoes, but I knew Jen wouldn't like it. So here we are.
And of course we picked the snowiest day so far this year, I think, to come out here. So I do appreciate it. And I'll mention with Andrew, like I have several guests throughout the week. It was a funky August and September for me, trying to figure out life outside the business and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate your friendship. I bugged you several times on what you thought I should do, shouldn't do, and all those kind of things. Always supportive. And yeah, I joked earlier in the week, if you would have told me, 3 years ago, the Lions won 15 games, I was no longer at WQAD and I was hanging out with buddies in my loft doing a podcast, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are, and it's been a fun first week. So thank you so much for coming out, and I've said I'll beat this drum as long as I can. And the Quad Cities and the John Deere Classic, they go hand in hand. And what you guys do out there, Andrew, it's the best sporting event hands down in the Quad Cities. And I know you'll be modest and say, well, thanks, whatever, but everyone looks forward to it, and it's become just a monster during the summer that you have to be a part of.
Yeah, I think you're right. And further than that, it's just such an important community event for us. And, to have a $72 million economic impact, to have the impact that we're having on nearly 500 charities each and every year, that's the engine that drives the athletic contest. And it's certainly fun to welcome the world's best here to the Quad Cities. And it's really something that we should never take for granted, because it is the only true professional sporting event in town. And, we've got so many great things that people can fill their time with in the summer. And as you know, and people are busy with kids' activities, but to have people understand the impact of what this event means on this community, you can't ever take that for granted.
You look at, and I love Claire Peterson. I always give you a hard time because, you had to take over for a legend, and you did. And sometimes in life, somebody will inherit something or get something, and they'll be happy with just driving the bus. And I think that's the awesome thing that you did, because you took this thing and you wanted to keep the ball going. We'll start with concerts on the course. You introduced that your first year, and it was great year one. You learned even more year two. How has that impacted what you guys do each and every year? You're like, you always joke you're a concert booker and also a tournament director at the same time.
It's interesting, right? Like, but the cool thing about it, Matt, is it's really turned this event into a true community event, because whether you're a golf fan, you're a music fan, you're just a fan of supporting summer-friendly events, it's got something for everybody. And, Claire Peterson laid such a great foundation over his 20-year career at the tournament, and I was blessed to spend 16 years with him. And, he was in our office yesterday, and we made fun of you for a little bit.
Awesome.
But he did. He left us with such a great foundation, a great staff, and we're pretty good at the golf stuff. We're still learning on the concert stuff.
I'm assuming you have the concerts ready to go. Want a drum roll, please?
Yeah, well, we're working on it. But in true fashion,
yes.
In true fashion, the Randazzos. This is your niece.
Yes, Katie Short.
And
she's going to be thrilled because she loves YouTube. She's been trying to get me subscribers. So the fact that we're mentioning her and talking about her, she's going to be on Clyde Night.
Well, this hangs on our fridge at the Stonehouse. But I can't tell you who the concerts are yet. But here's her rankings. Jelly Roll number 1.
It's good.
Katy Perry number 2.
Okay.
Taylor Swift, which is probably outside of our budget, is number 3.
Come on. I like how she's 3.
3.
She's not 1, she's 3.
Here's the one that threw me for a loop. Meghan Trainor at 4. And Kelly Clarkson. Well, Kelly Clarkson at 5.
That's
a good list.
Will any of those? Will you ever make her? Will any of her list ever come true?
I can tell her
no on a couple.
3 of these names have been on the short list. Can't tell you which ones, but
Ooh.
If it happens and we get one of them, we'll make sure we get Katie up there to introduce her.
Oh, that would be so. Oh man, she would go crazy. That is very cool. The concerts themselves, you learned from year 1 to year 2. What did you learn in year 2 moving forward? I think first off, year 1 was great. Tweaks in year 2 that you needed to do. Is there anything that you need to tweak or moving into year 3, or is it just kind of keeping that thing moving in the right direction?
We made a lot of improvements last year. We had more restrooms, more bar lines, more buses, more parking lots, and that solved a lot of our headaches in year 1. And we'll keep those things rolling. We're looking to do some different things. There'll be potentially a new stage that may bring some video elements into it.
Okay.
And we're also exploring on Sunday using the fairway, bringing fans for an upgraded experience closer to the stage.
That I think would be very beneficial, because I think some people, it gets a distance out there. Of course, the set at WQAD was always right above it, so we had a great spot to watch it. But I mean, it got loud. It got loud in some of those events. When you look at this tournament in general, obviously Davis Thompson, let's talk some golf. Obviously, what he did last year, a really good young name, and I know that that's something this tournament's always been based on, is getting that next rising young star. He kind of fits that mold of a modest, humble, talented young person that could do some big things in the future.
Yeah, and I think the PGA Tour expects that out of him. They've identified him as one of the next up and coming waves of young talent that's playing on the PGA Tour, and he's going to be a great champion for us. We've been on such a great run. You look at Sepp Straka's year goes on to play in the Ryder Cup. JT Poston was an unbelievable champion. We've had some great names over the years, Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson, and certainly Davis fits that mold. And I think the really cool thing in the story that most people don't know about Davis, his dad's a tournament director. His dad's one of 36 tournament directors on the PGA Tour running.
You're an elite breed, aren't you?
Well, just like today, you eventually scrape the bottom of the barrel, but here we are. But his dad, he gets that. He gets the tournament aspect of things.
Going into next season, and people always are, who do you, and I'm not that dumb, so I'm not going to say who's coming, because I get that. But like, when take people through the process, because when do you start reaching out? When do you start putting feelers out? What is your process? As I look outside the window, there's still snow on the ground, so obviously a ways to go. But what does the process look like for you as you get moving towards maybe a field coming up in July?
We try to get out 4 or 5 times starting in January. Unfortunately, my board doesn't allow me to go to Hawaii and recruit. Love to be out there at the Sony Open this week. And
we could have done a show live there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I would have gone with you.
I'm not sure I'd have dialed in for that. But, we try to get out a handful of times and talk to guys and, identify that next wave of young guys. And you look back at last year, Jason Day returned. Jordan Spieth returned after 9 years. And, the field's getting better, and I think some of these changes that are happening across the PGA Tour are going to help events like ours and make it more appealing for points for players to play more often.
Jordan Spieth coming back last year was awesome, and I maybe didn't know it at the time that it would have been my last one covering it in the way that I covered it. But to have him back and see him on those grounds again, what was that like for your staff, the board, people that, that's such a special time in sports in the Quad Cities. To see him back on the grounds and playing at the John Deere Classic was awesome.
It was. He gets an exemption in 2012, goes on to win his first event here, that picture behind you, in 2013 with an
Todd Meisner, I got to give credit to, because he called me and he's like, that's the picture I took. So I got to give Meisner credit for the picture. But
speaking of Todd, we were looking for a great photo of Davis Thompson and Kevin Rafferty, our chair from last year, and we used Meisner's photo.
He's the GOAT, man.
Just one of the best.
Meg McLaughlin. There's been some awesome photographers in the area.
Yeah.
So, he reached out to me. I don't know if I reached back out to him. So it's Todd, if I didn't say anything, I'm sorry. But yeah, you're getting plenty of love. This is where it matters. Who cares about the text messages?
But to go back to Spieth, plays well in 14 and then comes back here in 2015 when everybody told him he shouldn't. He had won the Masters. He had won the U.S. Open. And everybody said he should have focused on the Open Championship. And he comes back here in 2015 and wins, and then goes over, and Zach Johnson wins the 2015 Open Championship at St. Andrews, and Jordan finishes second. So, to get him back after that 9-year run, the phones never stopped ringing after he committed. Ticket sales were through the roof, and he made a nice run on Friday. What a lot of people don't realize, he was really struggling in the Quad Cities with his wrist injury, and he almost WD'd on Friday morning. He reached out to Michael Greller and said, "I'm not sure I can do it." He got his wrist back into place in the parking lot. And I think he shot 64.
Yeah, he had a good Friday.
Yeah. So,
do you remember his at 2015? He basically didn't play on Thursday. Like, I think he shot one over.
I believe he went 71.
Yeah, or
61.
It was either par or one over. I think it was probably par. And then he went crazy on Friday, Saturday, and the rest is history.
I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday, but he holed out a bunker shot on 17 for eagle.
Yeah.
And he held the club like he was disgusted with it, and it just ripped.
The best is you still talk to him to this day and ask him about the shot that's behind me, out of the bunker, and he swears that wasn't going into the pond. It was going into the pond.
It was moving.
Yeah, it was going. I mean, do you have like a favorite guys? I won't make you say them, but you have like those guys that, like, I mean, and you're the tournament director, so it's a tougher list for you to make. I could talk more about it, but like, Jordan Spieth's always going to be like my favorite at the top. Being able to interview him right after he won for the first time on tour is something that I'm going to tell my grandkids about. And then Zach Johnson, first guy I covered out there, got to become pretty decent friends with Zach. He's one of my guys, and that I got those guys that I want to. Obviously, those are the two of the best. But are there guys that come to town that you're like, I can't wait to see that guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going into year 19. You talked about Claire. Spent 16 years working under Claire.
You poor thing.
Yeah, no, great boss.
Can't believe it.
Great boss. Terrible fantasy football guy.
and a belt critique at the best.
Yeah,
at
well,
the best of them.
yeah, we've had some fashion throwdowns, but no, I've not run across a bad guy. And we've been blessed to have great champions, great sponsor exemptions over the years that we've formed relationships with. And, you look at Ludwig Aubert, right?
Yeah.
Ludwig comes here. We were going to give him an exemption in 23. He goes on to win PGA Tour U. That was the first year of PGA Tour U. And he comes here. He ultimately doesn't need an exemption. He wrote a letter to myself and our title sponsor, Rep Mara, last year explaining why he couldn't come back because of the Olympics. Like, those are the types of things you're trying to forge with these guys and form relationships. And Claire did an unbelievable job of that. And we're just trying to continue that tradition.
When it comes to the Mount Rushmore of the John Deere Classic, I always have one in my head. Do you have a John Deere Classic Mount Rushmore where you think like these are, and that's what I don't think people realize is while it continues to evolve, get better, it's been here for a long time. So it's not like just a small sample size of like, hey, this is, I mean, you got to go back to DA. You have to do those things and then bring it through. Am I putting you on the spot? Is there a Mount Rushmore of the John Deere Classic?
Listen, I'll give you 3. I'm not going to give you the 4th because we'll leave that open for debate.
Okay, I like that.
You certainly
I'll tell you the 4th.
You literally would have Stricker, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Guy wins 3 in a row.
Yep.
He ends up winning the Memorial. And I can't remember what year this was. It might have been when he was coming back for his three-peat. And we're ready to have media day on Monday morning. There's no way he's going to show up for media day. He texted Claire at 5 in the morning and said, I'm driving down from Madison. He shows up. So there's one, right? Yeah. Guy has cut a wide swath through the John Deere Classic.
And he won't come back ever since Claire left.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Okay, he's busy those weeks.
He's winning a lot on the Champions Tour.
He's doing great. It has nothing to do with Andrew. I just had to. Okay, so Steve Stricker, agreed.
Obviously, Zach. Zach serves as a board member for us. Great ambassador for.
And a champion.
Well, yeah. He finished tied for 3rd in 11 when Stricker won his 3rd John Deere Classic. Mm-hmm. He wins in 2012.
Yep.
Speaking of 2012.
Ooh, good segue.
Your first year covering the John Deere Classic.
Yes.
Was 2002.
Yes.
Who'd you follow?
Zach Johnson.
What was he? It was an exemption.
He was an exemption, and it was the Zach attack. So people had, I wish I could find I might ask Andy McKay to find it for me. I went to look for it before I left WQAD, couldn't find it, but we did a story on the Zach attack, and I bet you it was a horrible story, like writing wise and all that kind of stuff, technical stuff. But yeah, that was and he was so accessible, not as accessible now, and that's not a mean thing, but I think I talked to him like in a practice round and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the Zach attack.
Well, this isn't a 2002 flag, but since you followed Zach around, this is a flag from 2012.
Oh, I love it.
It was John Deere's 175th year. We were celebrating 175 years of our title sponsor, and we want you to have a Zach Johnson flag.
Look at that. That's going to go right up behind, might take the place of the Cubby right there.
I don't know about that. I mean, that 2016 World Series.
Yeah. Zach is, I mean, you know what? That's the thing is, we had the John Deere Classic didn't happen in the pandemic, and we still had to do like the 19th hole. Yeah. So, and I remember sitting down with Zach. He's always been very good to me. Obviously, I'm an Iowa fan, and so that helps. But he's always been very good to me. So to have that, that's awesome. Thank you, my man. Okay, so he's obviously now he's got to be on there.
He better be on yours too.
Yeah, well, he was. Yep, that's two.
And Spieth would be on there, right? Like, two-time champion of the event, certainly Hall of Fame career. And just an all-around great guy. I won't name a 4th, but there's so many great guys out there that have won our
who would you
event.
put in the mix?
Oh, gosh. I mean, Kenny Perry was great.
Yeah.
Jonathan Bird's a great guy. JT Poston's a great guy. One of my favorite guys on tour, and I think Claire would agree with this, is Jason Day. I remember Jason Day being here in like 06, 07, 08.
Yeah.
Obviously, he ran the golf course and finished in under 2 hours.
Yeah.
But, to have him, he would remember your name, right? And I was just the ops guy. And I'd go to other events. I'd see him in Dallas, and he'd be like, "Hey, Andrew." I mean, just an all-around great guy.
He was and it wasn't '06, but it was when he ran the course.
Yeah.
And it was Mark Nessler, and I've mentioned Mark Nessler 3 times, so I got an effort to get him out here. He ran the course, and he texted us as we were coming out of the media shuttle. He's like, "You got to get here." And we're like, "We don't." And Wheezy, he's like, "I don't care about Jason." Like, and I'm like, and then we told us what was going on. We're like, "All right, we'll get there." And we caught him, and he was so gracious with his time afterwards, and he had me saying "mate" for the rest of the day, which drove the trailer crazy.
Yeah.
But he was like, "Yeah, mate." It was just like, so really, really good.
We gave him a sign that said, "Nothing runs like a day."
That's awesome. When was that?
Right after we had our sign department print it, and I think he finished in like an hour 53.
Yeah,
I remember him sprinting up the 18th fairway. His caddy at the time was Cal Swatton, and Cal's 250 yards behind him in the fairway, and he's putting with the flagstick in. At that time, you couldn't putt with the flagstick in; you had to take it out. So he lagged a putt, made his par, and got out of it.
We had to try to get out there, and I didn't have the cart or anything. And luckily, Scott Weiss is a machine athletically.
Yeah.
And so he was all over the place getting everything we needed. Wheezy, he was amazing. Would you put does it have to be golfers
on my Mount Rushmore?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Because does
I didn't know you were going to ask probing questions.
But
does
Claire?
Sure. Yeah, Claire's a legend.
I think he is.
He
but
is a legend.
But like then you get to technicalities of like, does he count with the golfers? But I think when you look at the entire John Deere Classic entity that it is, but you have to put DA's got to be involved in it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
design the course,
still heavily
twice. He won twice, didn't he?
God, 2 or 3.
Yeah,
twice. Yeah, twice.
Yep.
Still involved. Like they talk about changes, lengthening holes. Yeah. They want to lengthen 2. They want to lengthen 17, and he's still involved in that process.
Yeah. No, I could talk that kind of stuff with you all day. Maybe wrapping up some JDC talk for right now. We'll talk some other sports real quick. When it comes to this year, what can it's there's snow on the ground. It's January, but is there any? And you don't have to say what they are, but you're always trying to tweak and do different things. The mind's working still these days. And then you're like up there, right?
It's working right now.
Oh God,
slow, but it's working.
Is there things you're working on? Yeah. Is there things you're working on, hoping for to kind of add to this year's event?
Always. And if you're in the event business and you're not evolving it, you're falling behind, 100%. Right? There's no shortage of things that are great to spend your money on, great to spend your time doing here, and we want to give our patrons, our guests that come through our gates, something new and exciting each and every year. And we've got such a great team that thinks outside the box, and we meet weekly and we discuss these things. We were talking about how do we utilize the fairway? How do you get people down there safely to give this experience, and how do you sell it? And it's just going to be so much fun. But you have to evolve. That's got
me so intrigued. How are you going to do it? Do you know yet?
You'll see in July.
I almost forgot about. So I think 2015 was in my tenure of doing it was the best year, but I can argue that 2022 was that Caitlin here. 23. I can argue that was the introduction of the concerts. It was Caitlin Clark Mania on that Wednesday, and who won that year?
Sepp.
Yeah, and a good champion too.
Good champion.
So I can argue that year's right there with it as well. When it comes to like crowds and you know what I mean, because you can look at like actual golf and say this golf shot, that golf shot, but when it comes to like electricity around that place, Wednesday of 2023, maybe Wednesday of 2015 with Bill Murray, and then that last Sunday of 2015 when Jordan Spieth teed off on 1 in 2015, there were people from the tee box to the green lined up to watch him go. Electricity wise, what are the times that you can pick out and say I loved being at that place at this time?
Those for sure.
Yeah,
and
just say Dazzo, you're right.
You're right, Dazzo, you're right. You see how I did that?
It doesn't hear. Trust me, that's never been said at this house before.
Yeah,
so.
Well, here we are.
Yes,
it's a new day.
It only took Jen to go to Phoenix.
Off the air with Matt Randazzo, baby.
I like
but
it.
You look back at 2015, and Bill Murray was here, and he was spectacular. And we broke the Bill Murray record on Wednesday with Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Didn't think it was possible, and it was Caitlin Mania. In fact, her group was on the clock because she's signing thousands of autographs and taking pictures, and just was such a fun day. But as they came down the stretch on Saturday in 2023, and to see 12,000 people on the 18th hole, right? I mean, they're packed in. You got a concert come up. Darius Rucker's getting ready to play, and but you can pick out times when you know it's busy, when you can't get a golf cart through certain places, and that's certainly the case now on the weekend in and around 18. And 2015 was madness. I remember as the ops guy driving out to the front gate in 2015 and looking, and at 10 a.m. buses can't make the turn because the line to get in was so long.
Yeah. We had recently at that point gotten a cart. Like, we finally got granted the WQAD cart, and I was
Andy Stottero.
Yes, God bless Stotts. I got to get Stotts on the show.
You do.
He and I remember being scared to use it in different areas, and I just was flat out, nobody's touching this cart but me. And I remember trying to get around on Sunday because I moved people to all over the place. People don't know how much we put into this thing on Sunday. And to be able to, I mean, you got to be in the right mind on Sunday to do what we do. I mean, you have to be laser focused the entire time. And I couldn't get around. Like, I could not get out of the trailer and move around with George. And it was similar that Wednesday with Caitlin Clark. Yeah. The amount of kids that I think came in. So last year, Keegan Murray was at the Pro-Am.
And AJ Dillon from
and
the
AJ
Packers.
Dillon.
Yeah.
You're not going to say any names, I know that, but can we expect a surprise or two maybe this year?
I think you have to. It's become an important part of Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, Keegan was awesome.
He was great.
I joked with Wesley Bryan. So Wesley did our youth clinic in 23 and 24. One of the all-time great guys on the PGA Tour. And he's talking smack. He's a South Carolina guy. Mm-hmm. He's talking smack to Caitlin, right? And so we pair him up with Harry Higgs last year in the youth clinic, and we bring Keegan out, and they do a shooting contest, and Wesley takes Keegan down. So I text him, and I'm like, dude, you need to start being nicer to the Hawkeye faithful around here. Like, he goes, I'm built different. I'm built like that. So we still joke about it. We text, and we caught up over New Year's, wished him a happy New Year, and he still talks about that.
Is that and to see people like that, and I mean, it's a humanity thing, but Caitlin Clark is as big as it gets, and she was as cooperating as they get. I mean, she did everything she went and did, and then she went and did the kids clinic, and the Keegan's the same way. Does that restore your faith and not in humanity, but you see these people, and then you find out they're just normal, good, everyday Iowans, I guess. That's got to feel good to find out that they're just as good of people as they are athlete.
I have Keegan Murray's personal address. Like,
well, that's creepy.
I mean, how weird is that, right?
Yes.
But like, that's you speak about that Iowa Nice thing, and Caitlin certainly had a team around her that was very protective, and there was a big rumor around town that we paid her this huge sum of money. We didn't pay her a dime.
Yeah,
she showed up. She was there early. She was locked in. She striped her first tee shot, which was awesome. And then when she played with Ludwig. And I remember her walking to the first tee. I'm walking with her and her parents, and she goes, "Who's Ludwig Aubert?" And I said, "He's the male college golf version of you."
Yes. And
so they struck up a friendship, and he becomes top 5 in the world in a short amount of time. And then she makes that turn because the Pro-Am's a 9-9 format. Uh-huh. She makes the turn, leaves Ludwig on 9. The amount of people coming across 9 to 10 tee where she was going to meet Zach. She played the back 9 with Zach Johnson.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember him saying, "Well, I guess I'll leave my Sharpie in the bag today. No one wants my autograph." But she gets done. It got hot on that Wednesday. It got really hot. She's sunburned. She's tired. I think she realized, that's a long walk around Deer Run. It's probably a 7-mile walk. Yeah. You're hitting golf shots. She goes in, does media. We went and got her lunch. Youth clinic's supposed to start at 2:00. Well, we get rain. We had to bring players off the course. We had to go through an evacuation.
And at that point, I'm like, there's no way Caitlin's
no way she's staying.
Yes.
I mean, I've got Landjet on speed dial ready to go to get her back to Iowa City. Connor's there. Her whole family's there. And she graciously stayed. Now, we didn't shoot any basketballs because it was raining. But she went out there and answered questions. She didn't have to do that. That wasn't, we didn't have a contract with her that said she had to stay and do that. But out of the goodness of her heart, we had probably 200-300 kids still stick around to see her. And she took her time. And Wesley, back to him, funny story, we moved all the kids back off the driving range to sign autographs. And he looked at me and he goes, "How come you've never done this with me?" I said, "Well, we've never had a police escort for you either."
Gosh, he does it great too.
Yeah,
like his show and his thing that he does. I asked Chasen on Tuesday, best contact in his cell phone, And he's got some. He went with Roger Craig, which was great because a Quad City guy, Super Bowl champion. So good answer. But I'm assuming your cell phone's okay when it comes to some cool names in there. What's the coolest name that you got in your cell phone? Don't say me because you're on the show.
Corey Cuffler.
That's yes, yeah. The other me.
Yeah.
What's the best one?
That's a great question. Unique one is I have Tom Lehman.
Yeah.
My dad's name's Tom Lehman, so I had to put my dad as dad.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not to dial Tom Lehman.
That is good. Yeah.
Probably most famous, probably Tom Watson.
Okay.
Watson.
Jordan Spieth's in there?
Jordan Lewitties, who's Jordan Spieth's manager, is in there. We don't have Jordan's direct line. We have to work through his team. I have Zach, yeah.
I got Zach.
Yeah.
I'm kind of cool in a way.
Yeah.
Speaking of Zach, good segue to the University of Iowa. You are a big Hawkeye fan. So we'll talk a little bit of Hawks before we take our first break. I guess with football wise, and the best is I feel like I'm your therapist when it comes to Iowa sports, because when I get a phone call or I get a text message, a lot of times it's just event or that kind of thing. Football disappointing, quarterback coming in. Where are you at with this Iowa football program?
Stoked.
Okay.
Stoked. I'd take a bullet for Kirk Ferentz. That's how highly I think of Kirk Ferentz.
Yes.
Now I'd prefer to take it in the leg, maybe,
There you go.
but
Yeah. I'm gonna die, but
Iowa basketball growing up, you and I have talked about this. Iowa basketball when I was a kid used to be on Fox in Western Iowa. I used to watch Iowa basketball as a young kid.
Yeah.
It was on Fox.
It was on Channel
ESPN Plus.
Okay.
Okay, you never missed an Iowa game.
No.
And my dad and I, that was my first love, Iowa basketball, and it still is. Mm-hmm. Love the football.
Is it? We'll talk about that.
I get frustrated at times. In fact, you got a text from me on Tuesday night.
Yes, and you were wrong.
And I was wrong. I'm glad you didn't share it with Brock Harding yesterday, but not that he knows who I am, but I shut the Iowa game off. I had enough, and that's me, man. I wear my emotions on my sleeve with the Hawkeyes.
So are you that guy that just says I'm done and just shuts it off?
I'm the guy that shuts it off and hoping that I'm the problem and that they'll turn it around. And it worked.
Yeah.
Because I went and watched the TGL on Tuesday night, and then my dad texted me and he goes, "You're never going to believe what Iowa won." I'm like, "You're kidding."
But did you now? I DVR all Iowa and Illinois and Iowa State games, and I'll enjoy going back and. Did you go back and rewatch it, or did you?
I watched the highlights.
Okay.
21 points in overtime.
Yeah. No, I enjoy watching things relaxed and not being a fan of what happened. And I'm more of I think because I cover Iowa and covered it for so long, and I'm an Iowa fan, everybody knows that, but I get into the Lions. I get really, so I'll rewatch Lions games just with a relaxed feeling, knowing that nothing bad happened because I'm so used to something bad happened. But okay, we'll talk basketball in a second. Football wise, you're stoked about, I'm the same way with you, big Kirk Ferentz fan. Have they finally figured it out at quarterback? They're trying. You got to give them credit because they're trying.
I hope so. I mean, Gronowski has all the tools to be successful. I loved, in fact, you've heard me say this. I loved Nate Stanley, and I thought Nate Stanley was awesome. And to get that comparison from Kakert, I thought was important.
Well, I think, and he just because Tom's probably watching, going, different type of player,
yes,
but maybe as good as,
yes. And I think he said end of Stanley career, and I think if Tim Lester's excited, why wouldn't I be excited? And I came away from the bowl game, even though they lost, I came away excited. I thought the young guys stepped up and played well. I thought Brendan Sullivan played great in the first half, and we didn't move the ball well on offense in the second half. But to take Missouri, who's a really good football team, to the wire. In fact, is that the Big Ten's, outside of Penn State last night, is that the Big Ten's only loss?
And Penn State's already won 2 games, I think. Yeah, because Alabama lost to Michigan.
Well, I guess I should say Iowa was the only team to lose to an SEC opponent.
Yes, because Alabama lost to Michigan. The other ones too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think.
But I came away.
But it was close. I mean, it was a good. It wasn't like they.
But when's the last time you've went into the fourth quarter? I believe they entered the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead.
Yeah, it was late third.
Yeah, and you feel like the game's wrapped up. In fact, the broadcasters talked about, Iowa got to 24 points. They're whatever they are, and but the defense. We've been so blessed to have such a great defense for so many years. It was bound to happen eventually, and it happened at UCLA. It happened at Michigan State, but man, I think the future is bright, and it stinks rolling in to get him for a year, but it's a nice bridge gap. I was worried for Brendan Sullivan's safety, quite Quite honestly, that dude needs to learn how to slide.
Well, that's the thing is I don't, and I wonder where he ends up. I wonder if he stays and competes or if he looks to go, if he's got a year left and all those kind of things. We'll go to basketball because Iowa did get that victory. We had Brock on yesterday. They got a big game against Indiana tomorrow. How many women's basketball games have you been to recently? Like in this year and last year?
More women's games than men.
And by a decent amount?
Yeah.
That
makes me sad.
No, but as a fan of Iowa athletics, do you have to, and this is, the Lehman money, I'm telling you, so it's not a money, but like, isn't it hard to commit to, you can't do both. You can't go to 3 games a week.
Well, I'm like you. I don't have 4 kids, but my 2 kids are extremely busy.
Yeah.
So finding pockets of time outside of when they're busy with their activities to go do these things. I love going to basketball games too because it's so easy.
Yeah.
Going to Carver, it's not a hard process. There's no tailgating involved.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice, couple hour experience. And I do text a little bit with Peyton Sanford. We got him on to play Deer Run, and so he's invited us to come to a game, and I'll take him up on that. But dude goes off for 30 points in the second half, and Josh Dix that dude gets hot. Watch out.
So I know that you're up and down with this team, and I don't mean that in a negative way. But because I'm intrigued by it. I think it's an interesting team to watch grow, develop, and obviously heavily Quad City invested with Brock and Owen being up there. But I'm interested to see how it develops. But with that being said, we've had some special teams. Iowa's had some special teams in recent years. How are you as a fan to watch them develop? Is it enough as an Iowa fan in year 14 or 15 of Fran? Is it enough to watch a team develop to maybe make the NCAA tournament, or do you want more at this point?
I want more, and I think every Iowa fan should tell you that. But what I will say is, Fran McCaffrey has done an amazing job. He took over a dumpster fire. When he came in, it was not good, and. What he's been able to do, he gets fiery on the sideline. You don't see it much anymore. He doesn't get that fiery, but he's an unbelievable ambassador for the state, an unbelievable ambassador for the University of Iowa, and he's done an amazing job. And I'm with you, man. How can you not be a fan of Brock and Owen? I see Owen, or Brock's mom. She's up there working check-in tables up at TBK for basketball tournaments. And
here's the thing, because Brody played with the Hitmen too.
Yeah,
and she. And probably Brock did as well. Brock will tell you he was going to be a great baseball player too. But they've been out of the Hitman organization for 10 years. And Shannon's still, donating her time, all of those kind of things. And Scott is going to be an athletic director here real soon in the Quad Cities. And as good a guy as they get, like, they're really good people. So it's easy to like that families and those 2 boys.
Yeah, and I like this team, and I've told you this. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I want them to be a tournament team. I think they're good enough to be a tournament team. The way that they played for 36 minutes against Iowa State, who might be the best team in the country right now. I came away encouraged with that, and what bothers me about Iowa basketball is none of these kids that are going to school right now but they haven't been good in their lifetime. They've been good. I shouldn't say it like that, but when we were growing up, now I'm younger than you. Because you started at the John Deere Classic in 2002. I was just graduating high school.
Oh, jeez. How old are you?
I'm 41.
I'm 45.
Yeah, I'm still younger.
Yeah. Yes. And you got more hair.
But man, you knew that Iowa was going to win a game, and a lot of times get to the second weekend. And it hasn't been since '99. We've been to a Sweet 16.
I think it's Fran's bugaboo is that, and it's not. It's been other coaches in between, but it's 99 since the last Sweet 16. You know that. Cooper Koch's dad was playing. JR was playing last time they made it to the NCAA tournament. Jess Settles, who was on the show this week as well, got keep playing.
Hey, by the way, why did you not mention the fact that Jess had a John Deere hat on?
I didn't. Well, yeah.
Come on.
I'm learning.
He looked great on here.
Should I write that down? Negatives of week 1.
But you look at it, right? The Keegan, Chris Murray, and Luca year when we were a 2 seed.
Yeah.
And VCU gets COVID. And Oregon doesn't have to play that opening round game, and then we get boat raced, right?
Yes.
And
it's Buffalo a few years.
You
ago.
know this as a Lions fan. As a Lions fan, and I'm a Bears fan.
Yeah.
raising kids as Hawkeye fans, Bears fans, and Cub fans,
Yeah.
I failed.
Yeah, no, I tell people all the time my kids are diehard Lions fans, and I feel like I should go to prison. Like I feel that's child abuse, and it was my purposeful decision to do that, and how dare I? But no, and I see what you're saying with the Iowa big picture thing too, because there are glory days. I remember sitting down in the living room and knowing that, and it was you talked about being Fox. They were on KWQC every Wednesday night at 7:00, every Saturday night at 7:00. That's where you went, and now they're competing. I'm so frustrated because Carver Hawkeye is not a bad arena.
No,
like I know there's things you can tweak and fix and all that kind of stuff, but there's that myth out there that it's Carver, and but were you at some of the girls basketball games last year?
Oh yeah,
it ain't Carver. Like it's not at all. And I remember I asked Steve Rowe. You mentioned him once, and he was at one of the women's games last year, retired now, but still doing awesome. And I asked him, I goes, "This is the loudest you've ever heard Carver." I think it was the Ohio State game in which she set the record the second time, and he's like, "I can't say yes because I'll always say that the game after Jess Settles on that Super Bowl Sunday, not Jess Settles, but Chris Street."
Yeah.
I'm not.
Did they play Michigan?
They beat Michigan, the Fab Five.
Fab Five.
He's like, I will always have to say that's the loudest I ever heard Carver, but he's like, this is right there with it, if not tied, if not above it. And so that dispels every myth that Carver can't be loud.
Carver's
and
awesome.
I'm trying to figure out how this Iowa basketball team can connect better with fans to get them. And I get and this is a whole podcast episode because there's the busyness of schedules and all those kind of things, and it's the different times. And we knew growing up, it's Wednesday, it's Saturday.
Yeah.
If you had a Sunday game on CBS, it was like, oh man, we got a
that
Sunday
noon game.
Yeah, it's like, wow, we're big time. But I get the youth athletics. My wife's out of town, and I'm realizing that, like, thank God I don't do what I used to do because there's no way I can get kids around to what I do. So I get the busyness of it, but I'm just trying to figure out a way to get that program to connect more with the fan base. And there's something to be said that it's Fran and it's apathy, and he's been around for so long, and you'd almost rather have fans be mad or happy, not just check out. And some fans, I think, not have checked out, but they're just kind of like watching from afar, kind of interested, but not dialed in the way that we were when we were younger.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And to your point, these TV schedules and 8 p.m. games, right? Like the fans coming from Des Moines, that's a hard ask for an 8 p.m. game. And, if we go over to an 8 p.m. game from the Quad Cities, it's going to be 11 o'clock before we get home on a school night. Yeah. And I'm just as guilty of not getting to as many games as I should. And, that team deserves support. They play hard. Mm-hmm. And I loved Brock's quote yesterday about how we kind of had a team meeting after the Wisconsin loss, and that's not how we want to play basketball. And man, I sit on my couch or I sit in that arena and I will them, man. I'm up, I'm into the game.
Until you turn them off.
I did.
I want to talk women's basketball with you a little bit later on in the show because, and I don't know. Maybe Ellie Lehman is the next Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I've heard things.
She plays hard.
Yeah, that's all you need. So
we'll talk fun.
Well, yeah, that's the important part. We're gonna talk more with Andrew Lehman. He's hanging out with us on a Friday, a snowy Friday here in the Quad Cities. Coming up after the break, Casey Kreiter joins us. A Central DeWitt product, played at Iowa, 9 years in the NFL as a long snapper, and he's just getting started according to him. And then later in the show, Jake Brend will join us. We'll talk some Iowa State Cyclones, your alma mater. The Iowa State Cyclone is doing a lot of great things. So Jake Brend later in the show. A lot to get to. A busy Friday here on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be right back after this break.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
You from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Here of the show, and there's another one that, you know, you talk about a Pat Anger, or you talk about a Julian Vandervelde, the guys that are playing at the next level. There's a guy that's playing in the next level and has been playing at a high level for a long, long time. He's a former Pro Bowler. He's been in the league, and I don't want to say how long because I'm going to mess it up, but I want to say at least 9 years, maybe around that. The one and only Casey Kreiter joins us, former Pride of Central DeWitt, former Hawkeye, and now New York Giant. Casey, first and foremost, thanks for doing this. Has it been 9 years? And what a ride it's been for you.
Yeah, this is thanks for having me, first of all. And this just finished my 9th credited season. I've been through 11 training camps.
Wow.
So it's been a fun ride, that's for sure.
Before we get into that ride and everything else, the Quad Cities, and you've been in Denver, you've been in the Giants and all that kind of stuff, but in New York, but you always seem like a Quad City kid or an Iowa boy. Kind of talk about your roots here and why this place is so important. Obviously DeWitt and the University of Iowa and all that kind of stuff. This is kind of where your roots are formed, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's where obviously I grew up my entire life. And, you know, I met my wife at the University of Iowa. She's from Muscatine. So both being from the Quad Cities, it's going to be instilled in us, and it always has been. I like to think we're still Iowans at heart, just moving around the country, and we try to live a simple life, live the life that we lived when we were there, that we grew up doing. But it's such a great place. Like, Iowa will always be home for me. And I sometimes, you know, the winters can get a little cold and a little windy and a little gray all the time, but yeah, you never forget it. That's for sure.
You are now in year 9. I can remember covering you at Central DeWitt and then going up to Iowa, and you went up to Iowa to be a linebacker. And then when did this whole long snapping thing begin? When did you start to hone your craft and kind of give me the roots of what have made for a really, really good career here in the NFL?
Yeah, I was always able to long snap, and I think the reason I got asked to walk on at Iowa was because of my ability to long snap. I'll never forget, I was at like a junior camp, did the linebacker workout, and asked Lester Erb at the time, the special teams coordinator. I said, hey, I'd like to snap, and he was talking to Brandon Weger at the time and really didn't give me the time of day. Like, obviously Brandon was such a big name recruit. They were trying to get him there. He was a great athlete. And he just kind of, you know, coach just kind of said, hey, all right, just try to snap it right to my hands. And I remember looking between my legs, and he wasn't really looking at me. And I was kind of like, well, all right, I guess I'll just snap it to him and hit him in the hands, and hit him right in the hands. And you could kind of see he turned his head, stopped the conversation with Brandon, and was like, hey, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Hey, do that again. Did it probably 10 times in a row. And he said, hey, send me a videotape. Let's get you on tape. You know, give me like 20 punt snaps, 20 field goal snaps in a row. Don't cut the film, just send it. That kind of kicked off the recruiting for me there. Played linebacker my first year, had a lot of fun doing it. Like, I was in the room with Pat Anger. I remember I asked Pat one day, I said, hey, Pat, can I just sit in the room with you and AJ Eads and Jeremiah Hunter and just watch you guys watch tape? And he, you know, you guys know Pat, and he's like, I mean, yeah, come on in. And there are probably some more words in there. And I remember I sat in the back of the room and I didn't say a word. He finally paused the film and he's like, are you going to sit there? Are you going to say anything, ask questions? Or are you just going to like be a dead body in the room? So really I learned a lot from Pat that year, but moved to defensive line going into my first spring ball. found out very quickly I was never going to play defensive line in the Big Ten. It's funny, now we have James Ferentz on our staff with the New York Giants, and I've told people in the building this year, I was like, you guys want to see a funny tape? Have James get 2010 spring ball and just watch him dog walk me every day in practice. I'm trying to play defensive tackle at 250 pounds, 245 pounds. But after that, I asked Coach Ferentz if I could move to just snapping. We ran pro style punt. I had to figure out how to block some of these guys and do that effectively. He was very, open to it. He said, you just got to play scout team for us. You're doing a great job there. I said, that sounds like a lot of fun. Just let me long snap and look at a card and run around and play football. And I had a blast doing it, but little did I know that was going to jumpstart a long NFL career.
And you and I will let you tell the story because I don't want to mess it up, but you almost didn't do this NFL thing. You were ready to be a teacher. Kind of give people that story. And life, I always say, is about opportunities and chances and things aligning and all that kind of stuff. They've lined up pretty well for you, young man. And you're not a teacher in Iowa City right now.
No, it's a crazy story. Like I remember I got approached, I think my redshirt sophomore year, and they said, hey, you have to pick a major or you can't play football anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I liked sports. I didn't hate school. Obviously my dad was a teacher there at Central DeWitt. So I said, I'll try teaching. If worst case, I'll teach and coach and stay involved in sports. My uncle Eugene being at North Scott too, I said, and I ended up loving education. I loved it. I absolutely had a passion for educating. Got to be involved in sports, wrestling, football, track, all that stuff. But I knew I wanted to try football. But after getting cut twice by Dallas in 2014 and 15, and honestly, that 2015 year, my tape was not very good. I didn't have a great preseason. I thought I was done. I understood the business and how it worked. So I thought, I'm never going to play football again. Let's pursue teaching. Did my student teaching that year. Accepted a full-time teaching job at City High. The next day I had a workout in Denver, and you never know what these workouts are going to be like. And ended up getting signed, and that was kind of going into my first year. But before that workout, the New York Giants actually wanted me to come work out. This was 2015, probably week 13 or 14 in the season, and there was a huge snowstorm in Iowa. I got stuck. I sat at Cedar Rapids Airport for 12 hours waiting to get out. They ended up canceling my flight. We had time. I called the team. I said, hey, my dad and I will drive. We'll leave right now. We'll be there at like 6 a.m. We'll get there at 6 a.m. We'll drive through the night. And they said, don't worry about it. Not a big deal. The next day they worked out Tyler Ott, another snapper who's still playing right now, and signed him to the team. And that was a pretty low point for me. I was like, that was my one shot. I was going to possibly play in a game. That was going to be kind of to jumpstart it there. Like you said, everything happens for a reason. If I get signed there, I don't get an opportunity in Denver. And my time in Denver was so special. So I'm kind of happy the way it all worked out, but it was a roller coaster ride.
So when you go from feeling like you're done, and you just self-admitted that you didn't have a great camp or great preseason, and you're now a former Pro Bowler, did your play get better? Did something click for you? Or what was the difference between thinking you were done and now sitting here 9 years later, whatever it is, enjoying a fantastic career?
I tell a lot of our younger players, like when we have first, second, third year players that come through, or some of the undrafted guys, I always tell them, like, I needed that to happen for me to get to where I am today. Thinking football was done for me and knowing that I was going to be okay, even if it was done, because I had a passion for teaching. I had a great mentor, Diane Coffin. I think she's still teaching at Iowa City Regina. I remember she sat me down. I was subbing in her class when that whole New York thing happened, and she sat me down and was like, hey, like, I know you really care about this and you want to do it, but I don't even know you as the football player. I know you as the teacher and educator, and you're a fantastic educator, and you're going to be okay if football's not there. That was really special for me. I needed that moment to unlock my potential, because when I went to that workout in Denver, there was no looking back. I literally said, what happens if I don't get this job? okay, I'm going to go teach at City High and I'm going to start my education career. And I'm getting married in July. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to start a family, brand new chapter. Great. And I ended up having to call the principal from Denver Airport and said, hey, this whole football thing's working out. We put together a really cool plan. And but yeah, I needed to get cut. I needed to get cut to kind of let me know, just play with no regrets. Just go out there and play. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You'll be okay.
Man, that's an awesome story and a lot to take from that and learn from that. It's not just been a year or so. Making a Pro Bowl in Denver, you're with the Giants now, you're a team captain now. When did you realize that? Because we just had Julian on the other day, and he said NFL means not for long. So you know that, and you don't know what it's going to be, the half of a season, an entire season, 3 seasons. Now here we're at 9 seasons. When did you realize that you had some pretty good footing and that this was something that you could do for almost a decade, Casey, which is crazy to think about?
Yeah, for me, obviously getting my first shot in 16, and I laugh now because I thought I was having a pretty good year. I've since gone back and watched that tape from 2016. It's not as good as I thought it was. It's it's funny, but I ended up getting hurt week 10. I missed the last 6 games. I went on IR. So there's a lot of uncertainty going into year 2. And I just remember I need to just simplify. I got to take it day by day. So the goal year 2 was just get through 16 games. That will be a victory for me. And after I did that, now it was okay, find a routine and do it year 3. And I'm probably bad at setting goals sometimes. I set them too lofty. But I remember when I finally made it, I wasn't going to be happy with 1, 2, 3 years. I would be proud of that, but I knew for me to be satisfied in the NFL, I needed to get 7. 7 was the first number I wanted. I wanted 7 years. I don't know why it was 7. It was just that's a respectable number in my mind. If I play 7 years, I can be proud of that. Anything less, it'll be a cool story. And once I got to 7, then it was, all right, let's go to 10. So this year it was let's just take it day by day, learn some new stuff, get better, fine-tune my routine so we can get to 10. And now that hopefully we get to 10 this next season, we'll set a new number. It'll probably be something crazy like 15, but you just take it day by day. That's the NFL. It's all about routine. I remember I go through it now sometimes. Strength coaches will be like, hey, short week, you probably shouldn't, lift heavy on Monday. And I have to sometimes you got to fight them and just say, no, I know my routine. I know what works for me. I know this doesn't make sense physiologically, but trust me, I will be okay. And once you've kind of established a routine, you can show you can do it. They let you kind of do your thing.
Getting close to year 10, a captain this year. What has New York been like for you? We'll maybe talk about the season and all that kind of stuff in a second, but making the switch from Denver to New York, you found some really good fitting. I know you're comfortable there. What do you like about New York? A small town Iowa boy living in the big city. How is New York? How is that organization right now?
New York's this is a special organization. I caught Denver right after they won a Super Bowl. Mr. Bolin, he was still around if I'm remembering correctly, but he had Alzheimer's and passed shortly after I got there. So, I didn't have a traditional setup with an NFL team in terms of owner, GM, head coach, kind of how that thing works. And when I showed up here in New York, you see Mr. Mara every single day in the building. And at the time, I wasn't sure if that was normal. I didn't really know. I had spent time in Dallas in a preseason. You see, Mr. Jones there all the time. But that's training camp, and we did training camp offsite, so it was hard not to see everybody. And then as I get to know New York and the organization, you find out this is a family business. Almost everybody who's a part of the Mara family and Tisch family, they work in the building. That's so cool to see. This is one of the founding NFL football teams. It's such a historic team. I said it this year in an interview. I said this being a team captain for such a prestigious organization is one of the coolest things I'll ever get to hang my hat on when my career's over.
You guys not in the postseason, some building blocks in the organization. What do you guys see going forward? What do you see going forward? How quickly can New York Giant football get back on track?
The parity in the NFL is so small, and I've been doing this for 11 years, and I always go back to this example in my own mind. when I was in Dallas, my first year, so that would have been 2014. I remember I got cut and I left, and just coming from Iowa, where there was a certain way to do things and it was super organized, and everyone kind of fell in line. It was not, I'm not going to say it was dysfunctional, but it was not what I was used to. And I left there thinking there's no way this team's going to be any good. I was like, I just can't see it. I don't understand how they could be. And they won like 15 games. That was the year. Des had the catch down the sideline in Green Bay. Was it a catch? Yeah. Was it not a catch? Unbelievable. And that was my eye opener.
Was that the year that they screwed over my Lions in the playoffs with the pass interference?
That might have been that year. Yeah, that might have been the year.
It was the year. Go on.
So that was an eye opener for me. Like, okay, so things are a little different in the NFL. Like, let's just, instead of maybe having expectations and thinking I have it all figured out, let's just kind of just experience it. Go back the next year, and that locker room was rolling. Things were much more. I don't want to say as a team it wasn't organized. Just the locker room was much more. It felt different, more like what I was used to in Iowa. And I thought that this is it. They have to win the Super Bowl. They were so good last year, and I think Tony got hurt. Dak had to step in that year, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So that for me was like, okay, so you really never know what it's going to be like until you get to the games. Yeah. And the margin of error in the NFL is so slim. When I think about 22 here in New York, where we went to the playoffs, we beat Minnesota in the first round. We lose to Philly, playing them for like the third time in, I want to say, like 8 weeks. Like, we won a bunch of really close games. We were 6-2, I think, to start the year, and all of those games came down to the last drive. You look at this season, and we win 3 games, but in the first, I think, 10 games, we had like 7 or 8 one-score losses that came down to the last drive. Like, the margin of error is super thin, and I call it, you got to ride the wave in the NFL. Like, if you're on a wave and your team's rolling, you just don't overthink it. Just enjoy it, ride it, stick to your process. And if things are going bad, those are waves too in the NFL, but you can't fight that wave. You just kind of got to try to start steering it towards a better direction. But this year was a little disappointing for all of us, but next year's a new year, and we'll see what happens.
You talk about waves. I mentioned I'm a Detroit Lions fan, a long-suffering one. I'm enjoying the hell out of this wave right now. It's all I can do. And I don't get mad when they lose, because I tell my youngest they were 0-16, or my oldest, they were 0-16 one year, so it can get a lot worse. You mentioned 10 years, Casey, and then you mentioned 15. How long can you do this? How long can you foresee? How long do you see yourself? As long as you love doing it, which you can tell just by listening to how much you love doing it. How long can you continue this career?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a little crazy probably by putting numbers on it, and you just take it year by year. But it's all about your body, how your body feels. Like, is your routine going to help you stay healthy? I've been in camps where they bring in a young guy, and sometimes it's, hey, we just want to get a young guy here and get a look for him. And I've been in camps that were truly like, hey, they're trying to get rid of me, or they're trying to find out if this guy is better than me. And that's why I try to focus on myself, focus on my routine, focus on the things I need to improve on, and just go from there. But the way the snapper market has gone, it's a little different than other positions. Like, when you look at college football right now, everybody's running spread punt. The snappers are getting a little smaller. They're a little more athletic. They can all run, but in the NFL, you don't do that. Like, you have to block people in the NFL, and you don't just have to block people. The guys they're putting out there are probably 270, 260, and they can run a 4.4 or 4.5. Like, that sounds crazy to think about, but that is the NFL. That's what this is. So a guy like me who's established myself in the NFL, I have a good track record in terms of protection. I think it's one of my strong suits as a player. That'll help you. And then you look at, like, when other snappers get hurt, a guy like Matt Overton, I don't even know how many credited seasons this guy has now, and he's worked his butt off to become a really, really good snapper. But when I got in the league, I think he was still in Indianapolis, and shortly after, Indianapolis moved on to somebody else. But the guy still has credited seasons 9 years later, because when someone gets hurt, they call him to come fill in, and he does a really good job of it. So I joke with some of the older snappers when I saw him this year, like, shoot, we might be in the middle of our careers right now. You don't ever really know. So hopefully we can play. Like I said, 15 would be great. I love doing it. I told my wife and my dad, like, I'd love to play long enough for my kids to remember me playing, and I don't have to pull up YouTube videos. So we just had a new one. So I don't know. I'll have to play a long time for her to remember.
A couple more things I want to talk to you about. Bring it back a little closer to home. I want to talk to you about DeWitt in a second. I want to talk to you about the University of Iowa because I've had a lot of Hawkeyes in this week for the first week of shows, and if you look at this season, 8-5, and it's probably a disappointing 8-5, and I think that says a lot for the program because if an 8-5 season is disappointing, then it's a really good football program because a lot of programs would take that in a minute. What do you see from afar? How much do you stay connected? And you got a coach of yours that seems like he's got as much energy as ever as he approaches the age of 70 next year. So your thoughts on this year's Iowa Hawkeyes and where the program's at right now?
Yeah, it's fun watching from afar. And then you get younger guys in the locker room who either played in the Big Ten and played Iowa or, some of the worst, and I say that jokingly, are the Iowa State guys that come in because they've had a little success, obviously this year, and so they keep you kind of involved. But for me, I love the fact that I get to watch, and it's still Coach Ferentz. Coach Woods was there when I was there. Seth Wallace was there. Phil Parker and I have had a legendary exchange my senior year that Tyler Kluver's talked about on his stuff, but it is a great program, and I'm just happy that they're still being successful. I was there for a down year where we didn't make a bowl game, and that was hard. That was really hard to be a part of because the standard is go to a bowl game, contend for a Big Ten championship, and I have full faith in those guys, the way they're able to adapt. Some of the struggles the program's been through on and off the field. I know I've sent Coach Ferentz lots of messages. Just I wouldn't want anyone else leading that program. Because he can handle anything. He can adapt. And more than anything, he's a great human being. He's turned me into a better man, a better father, a better husband. And that's the thing people don't talk about. That's the thing that's most important for me, that he's still out there doing that stuff.
No, he's as good as they get. Another pretty good dude is that old man of yours up at Central DeWitt. I got to spend a lot of time with him, dealt with him as the athletic director, coach, all that kind of stuff. How important is that community at Central DeWitt? And another one for you is Central DeWitt and the MAC. Is that weird for you to think about and deal with, and do you like that? So obviously the town of DeWitt still very important to you, is it not?
Yeah, I need to get back. I haven't been able to go back there in quite some time, and I need to because that's home to me, right? I grew up playing with my friends in backyards there, playing on the playground, and I love DeWitt. It's funny hearing it being called Central DeWitt still, because when I was going through, I think it was Central Clinton High School. We didn't even have DeWitt in the name. But it's fun to see them in the MAC, and I'm anxiously waiting and look forward to seeing them kind of take it over in the sports I was in, football and wrestling, because I just remember growing up, like, we would play them as freshmen and sophomore when you'd go to Bettendorf or you would go to Assumption or go to North Scott, and it meant something. It was like, hey, we know if we can beat them now, like, we kind of have a little bit of bragging rights. And it was a lot of fun. It was healthy competition. When I think of the MAC, I think of wrestling mostly, because wrestling Assumption, going to Bettendorf for practices, obviously going to North Scott to wrestle there. I had some great matches with Willie Argo. He bested me every time, and sometimes I still think about those wrestling matches and wish I could go back and do it over again. And then, my senior year, trying to qualify for state, I was the number 2 ranked wrestler most of the year. Got put in the wrestle background, and sure enough had a kid from Assumption, and his name's slipping my mind now, and I apologize for that because I should remember it. But the kid and I had gone back and forth. Like we'd always had wrestled close matches. And I remember thinking about my dad now. Our assistant coach, Adam Grell, had to tell him, like, hey, you are stressed out beyond belief. And I can see that to my dad. He's like, you just have to leave him alone. Like, he's prepared. Whatever's going to happen, he'll be okay. And I remember looking into the corner for that wrestleback match to qualify, and I could just, my dad had a different look on his face. It was kind of like he almost looked a little scared, and I was like, okay, I can't look into the corner this time. Like, we just gotta wrestle. Some really fun memories of the Quad Cities and sports and growing up. And the young guys listen to this in the Quad Cities, like, you're gonna have more fun than you'll ever have playing high school sports with your buddies. So take advantage of it.
I always say, and I say to my kids that and luckily for you, it hasn't, but for the vast majority of high school athletes, enjoy it, because before you know it, it's done and you're in the real world, or you're in college, or you're doing those kind of things. So very good advice to enjoy it while you're there, because it does go quickly. Before I let you go, I love it because you got 4 kids. I got 4 kids. So tell us about that family. You just welcomed another one this season. A family of 6, 4 kiddos. That's got to make for a busy household, does it not?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So I have 4 kids, Landon's 7, Brecken's 5, Quincy's 3, and our newborn her name's Madden. And Madden and I are on good terms because she was born the week after we went to Germany on our bye week. But leading into the week we were leaving for Germany, Megan was pretty far along, and the doctors weren't so sure she was gonna make it through the weekend with Madden still in her belly. So luckily it worked out. I would have been in a lot of trouble had she been born while I was in Germany. But the kids make it fun for me. Like I said, my oldest is now getting a little more involved in the game. He knows the players on our team. He tells me Dexter Lawrence and Malik Neighbors are his favorite player all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I kind of laugh about it, but it's very special to be able to look up into the stands at halftime or during the game. And, you get to see family. It's awesome seeing my parents there. They go to a lot of the games. My dad doesn't miss many, but it hits a little different seeing, my son up there. And like I said, we're playing catch in the living room, playing catch outside. And my girls are into it too. I come home and they've drawn pictures of good luck dad. And they got the red, blue, and white and the Giants logo. So I like to tell, again, teammates think I'm crazy for having that many kids, but I tell them like this, when I get on the field, like that's kind of my sanctuary away from the chaos of real life, like with the family.
Yeah.
So it makes it more fun.
Yeah. They think football is hard. Football is easy for you because the alternative is, I used to joke because, before I got done at WQAD, I would self-admit that there would be some nights that my wife would call me like, hey, are you going to be able to sneak home? And I'd make a business decision to say, yeah, I'm busy. And I'd stay at work maybe.
I'd be remiss if I didn't give Megan, my wife, a shout out for holding it down, because she is incredible. She does it on her own out here. And she makes it easy for me to be able to go play at a high level because I have no worries that the kids are taken care of. And she learned all that from being a good Midwest Iowa girl too.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. A Muscatine young lady. I love to hear that. So, hey, Casey, make it home sometime soon. Will you do that?
That's the plan. We're going to hopefully get back sometime this summer. We'll wait till the weather's a little nicer and I can go fishing on the lake or something.
There you go. Tell your family I said hi. Always appreciate you doing this, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right. He is Casey Kreiter, former Central DeWitt standout, former Hawkeye, and now 9 years in the NFL as a long snapper right now with the Giants. We got a lot more to get to right here on Off the Air. We will be right back.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West. the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
You from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. I've come to realize that I need to not play that commercial break right at the end of the show because I'm getting hungry and I see those Snoops. You've had Snoop's chips and salsa.
Oh, yeah, heck
Not
yeah.
just the chips. I did the enchiladas.
The enchiladas are fantastic.
Yeah.
The tacos are great.
Yeah.
We get Snoop's chips and salsa and guac in the trailer.
Yes.
In fact, I get yelled at. I'm a clean freak.
Who yells at Andrew Lehman?
My entire staff.
Okay.
My group, they love to just dish it out,
Yeah.
but I'll lean over the bowl. I don't want to spill salsa on the floor. And they're like, you can't eat over the bowl. I'm like, listen, man, I'm in here for like 30 seconds. I'm going to get two chips.
And I'm out. No, he's great. He's Andrew Lehman, joining us, the tournament director for the John Deere Classic. Nice enough to come out to the Randazzo Estate on a snowy Friday. January 10th, through the first week of this thing. Got about 45 minutes left of the first week, and there's been a few hiccups along the way, but for the most part, it's been a lot of fun. We want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching online right now, live on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so ASAP. We're up over 500 subscribers, and we want to keep that going up and getting bigger and bigger. Later in the show, we are going to be joined by Jake Brend. He is the Iowa State Cyclone expert that I like to call him. He is a sportscaster at WOI in Des Moines. He also has a Cyclone podcast as well, a Big 12 podcast. So he's going to join us to talk about, Matt Campbell, maybe going to the Bears or be interviewing for the Bears. I don't think he ever goes to the Bears, but interviewing plus the football program, the basketball program. That's coming up in just a little bit, but we are still here with Andrew, and you came bringing gifts. And I love that about my first week. I don't think Pat Anger does a lot of things well in this world, but the fact that he started a trend when he brought me the Pat Anger bobblehead it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
So I have that bobblehead in my office, and I'm curious. I want to know how many he's sitting on.
I know.
How many does he have? Like in the basement, in the garage? Like,
do you think there's like one in every room?
You just dole them out to your guests?
Yeah, I was surprised he still had one because I have one from. So what it was a River Bandits promotion back in the day.
Yeah.
And so they had 4 of them that summer. It was like Chuck Long was one of them.
Right.
Tim DeWitt, I think, was one of
Tim
them.
DeWitt
You have all of them,
and Hayden Fry.
Yeah. So, and I have all 4 in my basement, but like everybody's missing an arm or something like that. So I didn't bring them up here. Plus, it's weird because back in the day when Pat was in the league, like I think we have an autographed Pat like picture and stuff. In fact, like my wife was like, you should put like that autographed thing. I'm like, no, I don't want to put Pat's picture on my wall. Like we've become too good of friends to have like his picture or anything or his bobblehead. But no, he started a good thing. I like it.
Okay. Well, not everybody has a bobblehead of themselves like Pat. And I'm a little embarrassed to say I have one of myself.
I love the fact that you have
Now, I didn't order it. It was a gift from our caterer at the tournament, and she found a picture on Facebook and sent this as a Christmas gift. But I'd really like it if you'd put this on your table. This is the Lehman. This is the Lehman family.
That's amazing. Look at that. I don't know about.
I'm a little skinnier 4 years ago.
I don't know about the Barnstormer stuff. This is a Hitman household. I don't know if the Barnstormer. Do they all? Oh, they all bobble. Nah, you bobble the most.
Well, that checks out.
That's true. I'm gonna put this right up. You'll probably have to take it when you leave.
I'm gonna take it when I leave.
I understand that. I'll move some of the. I'll move Sep back, and I'll move Poston back. Yeah, I have most of these. I just can't find all. I have probably since Zach.
Yeah. Well,
but again, they all have like a missing. I'm afraid to even touch this thing.
So Zach was the first one that we did. We had partnered with the River Bandits. They did a Steve Stricker one.
12?
Yeah. So the River Bandits did a Steve Stricker one to commemorate his three-peat, and it's smaller. It's like the Pat one, And then we got into the bobblehead business.
I do like how Pat is little.
It is a little guy. We got into the bobblehead business in 2012, and now it's the staple of our Kids' Day. All the kids, 750 every year.
It's really really
okay.
Cool.
But I did bring something that I hope brings value to you, makes you smile. So
you've already done two things.
You've been a great friend, all of us at the John Deere Classic, and I don't have anything to give you from 2002. Although I think the Zach flag helps, right? Like
that's awesome.
That was your first assignment.
It's absolutely awesome. That Zach attack is the best.
So your last tournament covering for Channel 8.
Yes.
We would love for you to have a Davis Thompson tee marker.
Look at this thing. So it's actually signed by Davis too.
It's signed by Davis.
And I get to keep this.
You get to keep it.
Are you kidding me?
That's a gift from us, all your legions of fans and friends at the John Deere Classic.
You know what? And that's the cool part about going out there is I can't go out there without.
There's a hole in the bottom that you can get it out with.
Thank you for that because I was going to get.
I'm watching. That's like a $300 toy. You're just like grabbing the top of it.
I know it was like rip. That's the cool part about going out there. That is really cool.
First of all, those are the greatest tee markers on the entire PGA Tour.
And it's actually that's amazing.
So those just for your your subscribers, those get auctioned off for charity. So again,
so I'm taking money out of charity's pocket.
Wouldn't be your first time.
Probably not gonna be my last. That's the cool part about going out to where you guys are at is because there's so many good, and not just in your building and the brick house and all that kind of stuff, but when you go out there and you roam around, you see Mitch and you see all those guys as well. Like, it's just great to see Hajduk. I almost didn't say Hajduk's name and I would have gotten in trouble.
Yeah, Todd.
I got to have Todd out here. Do you think he'd come out?
Yeah, you make fun of me that I'm a handsy talker. He's even handsier.
Yeah.
He'd come out.
That's why I like
What
him.
else has he got to do in the
I don't
winter?
want him to come out if he's a handsy. I don't know if that's a good idea. Yeah, I should have a Hajduk out here one of these days. I'm going to do that. Well, thank you for that. That's going to go front and center. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. Look at that. You know what? And people tell me like the things that I will miss, and I'll be out at the John Deere Classic doing something, and maybe even the show. But I'm gonna miss the Friday nights for high school football, and I'm gonna miss the John Deere Classic. That week is 100+ hours. We live out there, but it's so gratifying at the end of it. So thank you for doing that. Yeah. Now I got to be nice to you for a little bit. You know what? I do have a Stricker signed thing downstairs that Claire gave me, but this might have.
There's not a lot of things that I do better than Claire, but that might top that one.
You both have given me belts, which is depressing.
Well, first of all, nice. that was a charity case. Your belts were in bad shape.
Well, my problem with my belts is it depends on the season. Like right now, I love this shot right here because scooch back that way.
Yeah. See, I'm just gonna put your little therapy pillow right
pillow.
here.
You call it a therapy pillow. That's a fat pillow.
That's gonna stay right here.
Yeah, but hey, come June, I'm ready to rock. People ask me like, "Hey, what size are you?" I'm like, what year is it? Yeah. Or what time of year is it? So
we had one of our chairmen. You'd know him. I won't throw him under the bus. But the year he got married, he had a 28 waist. The second year he was married, he was 29. The third year he was at 30. And he's like, I see what's happening here. She goes, this isn't going to be a trend.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I get you. Speaking of like, and I'm going to mess it up, but you were recently just named the most powerful human being in the Quad Cities with influence to rule the world. Or something like that.
That's exactly what it was listed as.
But to have, what was it? One of the most influential people under 40 in the.
Yeah. So I
this is bad research. I should have it researched.
No, you're on the right track. I have won the 40 under 40 award. In fact, we've had multiple people in our office, pick that award up. This was I don't remember how many there were. 25 maybe. The 25 most influential business leaders in the Quad Cities. Not sure how my name made it to that list.
That's awesome.
But Decker Plain, ultimately, he was the 2008 chairman of the tournament.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah, Decker.
Baby. Yeah, baby. And everybody has a Decker story.
Oh yeah.
Can you give me a Decker story?
Is this a PG? Is this PG
it's
or we are?
It's YouTube. You can do what you want.
Okay.
Now, don't make sure he doesn't get mad at you.
No. Okay.
Make sure he stays clothed.
No, yeah. Well, he might be one of the best dressers in town.
He is. He'll tell you.
Yeah, well, for sure. There's too many to share.
I got one. I can't tell it to you, but when we get off air.
But he tells stories, and they change just enough each time he tells it that they're still interesting.
Yeah.
But every morning, he still is involved in the tournament. He's one of our player relations people in the clubhouse. And every time I see him in the morning, it's looking good, Lewis. Feeling good, Billy Ray.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Well, he's always He's always roaming around with golfers, like escorting around. And there was somebody last year. Gosh, who was it? And I'm like, hey, it was Monday. I'm like, hey, can we grab you real quick? And
I remember this.
And I'm not going to say what
he probably blew you off.
He can't, no, but he was like, he's like, don't talk to him. And then he said some outrageous things that I do to people. And it's not true, obviously, but he is literally, when I get, remind me when we get done. And the thing with Decker that I love is like, I don't know how he gets the card to get away with whatever he gets away with, but like, I'm glad that he does. He's like, my dad, when he got older, would always say like, I can get away with saying what I want to say because I'm a cute little man. And I'm not saying Decker's a cute little man, but like, he is. But he just says it and he smiles and people think it's funny. And if you said the same thing that he said, you would either get canceled or get fired or whatever. But Decker's Decker.
He has a
Do you
unique.
think Decker would ever come out here?
Oh, for sure.
And by the way, we tried to get him to be the guest griller on the score, and I think he told McKay no.
Maybe he doesn't grill.
But I think it was because it was too late at night.
That probably checks out.
I can see that.
I mean,
I hope he's up by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning and come out here.
Oh, yeah, he can come out.
Yeah, I'm going to make that happen. That's a really good one.
Here's a great story about Decker. When I was the Apps guy.
I love how this is
actually,
going. I love where this is going.
I'll get him. He has a radio. First of all, we should just give him a fake radio. So I'll get a call on the radio. Decker to Andrew. Yeah, Deck. Hey, can you come by the clubhouse for a minute? Yep, sure. I'll be there when I can get there. So inevitably 30, 35 minutes goes by and I already took care of it. Like I just wasted my time now coming in. Just tell me you took care of it.
He's one of a kind. And he is, so what was he named?
He was the Quad Cities most influential. So I was lucky enough to have a quote in the article celebrating him.
You were in the top 25?
I was 3.
You were 3?
Like,
who was between you and Decker?
Dave Harrell. So
how do I get on this list?
Todd Hyduke we had a board meeting.
He wasn't on the list.
No.
Okay, I was gonna say.
So this is so outside of my comfort zone. I just don't like any of this stuff. And Todd Hyduke, general manager at TPC Deer Run, we had a board meeting and he was talking to Dave Harrell and I. And he said something. I said, you better watch the bass in your voice if you're going to talk to number 2 and 3 in the Quad Cities like that.
Yeah. That's impressive. Yeah. Is Dave on the...
He's on the tournament board.
Gee, I knew that. Man, I'm like, I don't know if I feel like I should have cleaned before you came, or like, I don't know what.
You could have shoveled the driveway.
If there's an inch of snow, Grandpa, you're going to be okay. You didn't fall. We talked a little bit about Iowa athletics before this, and I kind of want to touch base with that, and then I want to wrap things up with you when it comes to the tournament one more time. But the Iowa women's basketball program has I know has taken a soft spot in your family's heart, and you guys have been involved with going to a lot of games. With a daughter who loves to play basketball, what has the last 2 years like? Probably more than that, 2, 3, 4 years like been to watch. Not even just your daughter, but young women everywhere, young girls everywhere, and just fans in general kind of embrace what they've done in Iowa City.
You're spot on. I think the growth in the game with young kids, you go to any of these basketball arenas, the amount of second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade girls basketball, kids playing basketball. I mean, it's fun to see. It's fun to be involved in. And, Caitlin's probably the closest thing to the Beatles the state of Iowa has ever had. I mean, it was Caitlin mania everywhere they went. Yeah. And it translated to the WNBA in season 1.
Big time.
Teams moving arenas to seat more capacity. And, to look back on this and to have, my daughter's 11, so 8, 9, 10-year-old, in those formative years. Yeah. And even my son, he's wearing Caitlin Clark T-shirts, and he's got a Caitlin Clark signed jersey in his room. And, to see that's fun.
This, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I would have said like 5 years ago, I don't know how to say this correctly, but it would have been unheard of. I'm not saying it was bad or good for a young kid, a young boy, to be wearing a girl's basketball shirt.
100%.
I mean, and now it was I can go get you one out of the closet.
Right.
Like that's how much she affected the landscape, and still does, the landscape of sports, is that she was fans. It wasn't just young girls that was watching her. It was all young people and old guys like you and me.
I keep 2 athlete clip videos on my phone. So I have the Michael Jordan clip where he talked about I might have been a tyrant in The Last Dance.
Okay,
I keep that clip on my phone, and I go back I watch it a lot.
Yeah.
I videotaped it on my phone on my TV, and I did it multiple times so I could get it framed correctly. But I have the State Farm commercial where she talks about greatness.
Oh.
And I'll text that to my kids.
Yeah.
And it's not about being a great athlete. It's about being a great person.
Yep.
And whatever you're going to choose to do, be the best you can at it. right? Like put the time, the effort. We've lost, and I know you guys have talked about youth sports. We've, as a society, and I don't know when it happened. It wasn't this way when we were kids. Nope. We've lost our way with youth sports.
Yes.
And it's just to the point where you read these articles, and even coming off the Caitlin mania, there are girls basketball programs in the state of Iowa that don't have 20 girls out from freshman to senior. Like that's got to change. Yes. But when we look back at this Caitlin thing and this University of Iowa basketball program for the last couple of years, and they've been great. You know, Aaron Blue, good friend of both of ours, has been beating us both down. Like, why are you not watching women's basketball?
We've dropped everyone.
Yeah, we've cut a wide swath.
We've done good. Yeah.
But when we look back at this, how blessed were we?
Yeah.
Right? And that does, you don't have to be a Hawkeye fan.
Yes.
Like
you mentioned The Last Dance. In 10, 15 years, there will be a 30 for 30 on that basketball run.
Yeah.
There?
I would assume so.
How often have you watched The Last Dance? I love that thing.
So I've seen it by myself twice, and I have Ethan's 14 and Ellie's 11, 8th grade, 5th grade, and she loves Jordan and she loves Kobe.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so she's a Jordan shoe collector. She plays basketball on Kobe's, but she and I watched it, and that's special.
Yeah, no, and like my favorite one is I'm not a sports gambler, I'm a sports competitor or whatever. Right. I have that shirt. It's my favorite thing ever. Now quickly with Iowa women's basketball this year, and I think like they lose to Illinois yesterday. They've lost several times this year. I think it's going to be different. But I think the energy in the program is still there. Obviously, you just can't replace. Here's the thing: is I always talk about, yes, Caitlin's gone, and Kate Martin, who we talked about during the break, and Gabby and a bunch of them. But Lisa Bluter left too, and that's no. I mean, I think Jan's going to do a great job, but like you lost a legend. Yeah. A lot has changed, and for them to still be having that success, the energy's still there. But I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, the way they are this year is kind of what I expected. As a fan who's watched, is this what kind of you've expected this year?
Yeah, there was no feasible way to keep, scoring 85, 90 points a game, right? Yeah. I mean, you lost a significant amount of your scoring. Yeah. But they play a fun brand of basketball. We went as a family to the Iowa State women's game, and what a great basketball game. Yes. And you coach basketball, I've coached basketball, and I remember telling Ethan and his buddies when they were in 6th grade, watch the NBA, watch college basketball, but don't model your game after that.
Yeah.
Go watch women's basketball. It's fundamentally sound. They play inside, they play outside, and they can't dunk.
Yep.
So it's real basketball.
I was telling my 4th graders yesterday that I coached to go home and watch some basketball, and I suggested, like, not to be like that not cool guy, but don't watch as much NBA. Watch some college stuff. Yeah. Watch some women's college basketball, because that's more relevant to what you can do.
Right.
These guys in the NBA, they can just go and they can do things that you're not going to be able to do. And you're spot on with youth sports. It's really frustrating sometimes because they should be teaching life lessons. I remember, and I don't like to give my oldest Charlie any credit very often, but he loves to shoot. He saw I did a Brock Harding story. Brock gets up all the time and shoot. That's what he wanted to do. So going into his 7th grade year, he wanted to shoot. He put in a ton of time at PepsiCo early in the morning before school shooting. And first game, he comes out and makes a bunch of threes. And I took it as a moment to, like, it's not a basketball thing where, like, if you put work in shooting, you're going to make shots. That's a life lesson.
Right.
And that's what youth sports are. Like, pick whatever. If you put a bunch of time in being a tournament director, you're going to be a pretty good tournament director. If you put a bunch of time in and being a goofy fat podcasting guy, like, hopefully it works out. But just work hard at stuff. And I think people have lost their way. And when it comes to my kid's going to be the next Brock Harding, the next Dorn Freeman, the next baseball player, whatever, and covering the area for as long as I have, they don't grow on trees. But the people that I've covered are awesome.
Yeah.
And that's the cool part, is some of my best friends from doing this stuff that I've stayed in touch with, they're just parents, they're moms, they're doctors, they're lawyers, all those kind of things, they're teachers, and that's just as cool as well. That's my little soapbox for a Friday. When it gets to the John Deere Classic, I got a little bit of time left with you. We kind of talked about some of your favorite memories and all those kind of things. Where do you think this tournament can go to when it comes to the grand scheme of, because everyone is always asking me about the date. Everyone's always asking me about the PGA Tour, the changes and all that kind of stuff. How much, I don't want to say where can it get to, but how much do you have to adjust with all those things? And how much is it constantly a scheduling thing? Now it's on the 4th of July, you embrace that. What's that like for you each and every year?
Honestly, the best part about our gig is that no year is the same,
Yeah.
right? Like every year is different. And, would we ultimately love to be off the 4th of July? Yes. However, when you look at it, we've got a rich history of military presence here in the Quad Cities with the Arsenal Island. Near and dear to your heart, Joe Moreno. We did a partnership last year with the Firecracker Run. And, to be able to celebrate our nation's military, and we did Folds of Honor Friday. We actually gave away last year 18 $5,000 scholarships to fallen soldiers' families.
That's awesome.
And to have that Folds of Honor Friday be on the 4th of July this year, it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah.
And so you embrace it. And, I don't know where the PGA Tour ends up. You still have Live in the mix, and is there going to be some sort of coming together? And I think there will be over time, but you got to figure that part out too, because how do you schedule, normal PGA Tour events? You've got the fall series, you've got all these events that fire up in January and run through the end of August with the playoffs, and then you got the fall series. So where do the Live events fit in with that when they do eventually come together, if they do? And you look at all that, and all that stuff's out of our control. We can't control where the tour goes. So all we can do is put the best event on for this community, put the best event on for our title sponsor, and we do have the greatest title sponsor on the PGA Tour. And what I think is really unique and fun is, we talked in 2012, it was John Deere's 175th anniversary. So now we're pushing 190 years of a company still doing the same thing they set out to do 190 years ago. And so they trust us with their brand. You're talking about a Fortune top 75 company in the world trusting our team of 7 or 8 people with an iconic brand. And there's no mistaking when you come to the John Deere Classic where you are. It's very evident that you're at the John Deere Classic. Now your viewers are going to get a front row view to that team marker every day. That's right.
All 500 subscribers are going to see that all the time.
Ashley texted me, just so you know. She texted me and said Jordan Spieth's 61 was on Saturday.
And you need to correct that.
I did. Yeah, that's a professional move right there.
Yeah, she's carried you for so many years, and she continues to do so from afar.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Well, I appreciate you bringing all the things you do. I appreciate you guys coming here first week. You've become my favorite guest so far because of all the swag you did bring me. But I appreciate your friendship as well. You've helped me out through this whole transition, everything like that, and I can't wait to continue to see the John Deere Classic do big things. I'm gonna bug you that week. I'm gonna be out there doing this stuff if you let me, and all those kind of things. So I appreciate it, and thanks for coming in.
Here's one parting shot.
Uh-oh.
Really happy for you.
Thank you.
Just couldn't be happier. The amount of time you're going to get to spend with your family is
good and bad.
Yeah, well, depends on how they feel about you.
Yep.
But if you ever need an AJ Hawk, like I'm happy to dial in and smoke a cigar and nod my head.
Well, that's the thing is that people tell me like, man, you had some good guys come out to the house. I realized that like a month into this, it's going to be harder to get people actually come out to the house. So like, but the beauty thing is this video thing's working out really well. So that's what Anger wants to. I think Anger is the AJ Hawk, but you could be there's other guys.
Listen, no one's going to confuse us for linebackers. I mean, he certainly still looks like he could play, but I might smoke a cigar better than him.
That's absolutely, I'm sure you do. So he is Andrew Lehman. The John Deere Classic coming the 4th of July, week of 4th of July. A lot of time to get. I think you could announce the concerts on the show. I'm just saying.
Happy to do it.
Something. So, anyways, he's Andrew Lehman. We got a lot more to get to. Coming up next, we're going to talk Cyclones. We're going to talk about the rumors or the reports of Matt Campbell interviewing with the Bears, their fantastic football season, and also they got a number 3 ranked basketball team in Ames. So Jake Brend from WOI will join us here in just a little bit right after this break.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
You from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air, a snowy Friday here in the Quad Cities, and we've talked a lot of Iowa throughout the week. We've talked a good amount of Illinois as well. The Iowa State Cyclones having fantastic years. Of course, football was great. Men's basketball is outstanding right now, and of course, Bill Fenley and the Iowa State women always doing well. So we wanted to catch up on the Cyclones, and so I turned to a younger buddy of mine who's been doing awesome things in the Des Moines area. Jake Brend is joining me from WOI. You also do some podcasting with Everywhere Iowa. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But first and foremost, Jake, I want to talk to you about maybe a later Christmas surprise or gift. You were named the Sportscaster of the Year in the state of Iowa by the IBNA. What does that mean to you? And you're just a young pup. Well done, young man.
Thank you. It truly means so much. And the last week has been just an outpour of congrats and thanks and nice messages from people from all over the course of my life. So I'm truly lucky. And the finalists, I don't know if you knew this, but the finalists were Keith Murphy, John Walters, and then Shannon Earhart from KCCI, who's one of my best friends. But Keith is my mentor. I interned for him for 2 summers, and I grew up listening to The Godfather on Iowa State games for pretty much my entire life. So to even be in the conversation as those people is pretty incredible. And then to win was a huge shock.
So the student has surpassed the teacher. Have you informed Keith of that he's old news now, and there's a new dog in town?
Well, so Woodley and I were talking about this, and we're like, Keith probably should have won this award 15 times. It's kind of like how LeBron would have MVP 18 years in a row if it actually went to the MVP. So I think Keith might be the grand puppet of being like, you know what, let's spread out the wealth. But no, Keith was super happy for me, and just the fruit of my labor has paid off, and that he played a huge role in that, and
yeah.
so many other people.
I'll mention this because the Des Moines area, the Cedar Rapids area, kind of like the Quad Cities area, where yes, there's quote unquote competition, but we're all in this together. You're missing Shannon being one of your best friends, and at a competing station, of course, but we're all in this together. And Keith was so great to me when I was coming up in the business. Not to age Keith, because he looks like he's like 35. I mean, he's amazing, but he was great with me and you, and we've worked together with a lot of people throughout the state. So that's the cool thing about this whole. I had Jay Kidwell on earlier in the week, and we competed, quote unquote, for so long, but we're all in this together, which is a good thing. Before we talk Cyclones, you have the Everywhere Iowa podcast. Kind of, what is it? How can people get it? Because I think Quad City Cyclone fans are always looking for more. They always feel like that third tier when you have Iowa and Illinois here in the Quad Cities. So how can people partake in what you do each and every week?
Yeah, so I host the Bigger Than 12 podcast on Iowa Everywhere, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you can get podcasts, and YouTube. Iowa Everywhere. And I think YouTube is kind of where the media landscape is heading. That's been where a lot of our focus is. But my podcast, we like to say it's 90% Big 12, 10% Iowa, or 10% Iowa State, because there's a lot of Iowa State content over in Des Moines. And my buddy Derek Duke and I, who lives down in Texas. He's truly just a Big 12 guy through and through with Heartland College Sports. We talk all things Big 12. So if you want to check that out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get it. And then we've also got tons of great other Iowa and Iowa State content on Iowa Everywhere.
Absolutely. Check it out. Jake does great work. Let's talk some Cyclones, and we're going to talk. It's weird to not lead with the third-ranked team in the nation, but we'll put the men's basketball team on the sideline just for a second, because Matt Campbell rumored of interviewing, not interviewed of going to the Bears, but interviewed or rumored of being interviewed by the Bears, or there's interest in the NFL. As a guy in that area, in Ames, knowing what's going on in the Des Moines area, does this surprise you, not surprise you? It's almost like it happens every other offseason. So it's kind of taking me through that news and what Cyclone fans, how can we digest this if you're a Cyclone fan?
Yeah, pretty much every single time that Iowa State exceeds expectations, you know what's going to come in December and January. It's going to be Matt Campbell to this higher SEC job rumors, Matt Campbell to the NFL rumors, and it's really happened almost every season since 2017, like you said. Now, as far as the Bears go, for me, when there's speculation, I do always think it's more of a possibility when it is a Midwest connection. Like when Notre Dame was open a couple years ago, we don't know truly what went into the interview process, if he did interview or not. But a Notre Dame always would have worried me more for Campbell leaving than, say, a Kentucky or, say, a West Coast school. So there's that aspect of the Bears where it's a familiar territory. And then as far as the rumored to be interview, I would imagine that's true. Jamie Pollard has always been transparent that he wants his head coaches to be free to interview elsewhere and to get what they're worth and see what they're worth. So all that being said, I know the Bears are not interviewing just 3 people.
I think
they've kind of
you. I wouldn't have them later. I think everybody is.
They've cast the net wide.
Yes.
And when you're casting the net wide, that's why it would make sense to talk to a guy like Matt Campbell, and who knows if they would even offer him or if Campbell would accept. But that's kind of a long-winded answer to say. If I'm an Iowa State fan, I wouldn't be too worried about him leaving, because this is definitely not him like looking to get out of Ames. It's similar to Fred Hoiberg from what I sense, where it's wants to be in Ames, but you'd be stupid to not at least talk to the NFL and entertain the idea of maybe making that jump.
It reminds me of in college basketball where you can go to the combine and come back. It's like there's nothing to lose. You might as well go see what it is, see what it's about. Does Matt Campbell strike you as a eventual NFL guy? I mean, I love what he's done in Ames, and I feel like he's more of a culture guy where you build that kind of culture, and that has some sticking with I got to give my beloved Detroit Lions some love with my guy Dan Campbell. So same last name, but he is that culture kind of guy where you build something special. Does he strike you as an eventual NFL guy someday?
I think he could. So I don't know how much you know of Campbell's like background, but he went to a D3 school that was a powerhouse. And when he got to Iowa State, almost all of his staff was from this D3 powerhouse that actually I think is up to D2 now. So he was there for a long time. They won a lot of national championships. He was at Toledo for a little bit, and then once he's at Iowa State, it's similar in the sense where he loves to be at this place and build his culture, do it his way, turn a place that historically has not really had much success at all, and certainly not a lot of NFL production, and he has turned that around to where you flip on the TV on Sundays now, pretty much any game you watch, there's going to be an Iowa State guy making an impact. And 10 years ago, that just wasn't the case. So I know he takes a lot of pride in that, and I know he's comfortable in Ames. But I like the comparison to Dan Campbell. I was talking with buddies about that yesterday, where the NFL is turning to a lot of these Shanahan play calling gurus, and that's just not Campbell. I know he's involved with Iowa State's offense and he's involved with the philosophy, but it would be much more of a Dan Campbell approach where he gets his OC, his DC in place, and he's the culture guy. He's the one trying to get the most out of his players. And I don't know exactly how that would go at the NFL level. There's no doubt that he's been able to get the most out of talent in Ames because he's done what no coach has ever done in Ames. And I would think that would translate well. But at the same time, in college, guys are choosing to play for you. They're your guys. They're your recruits. In the NFL, it's not that way. And that's probably the main hole I would pick. I don't know how that would translate.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. Being a Big 12 guy, let's talk about this Iowa State football program, and they go to Kinnick and get that victory, and that kind of just, I don't want to say snowballed everything to going to big places, but that's always a big one to get, to kind of continue through. Looking forward to the future and the Big 12 conference, that's got to be exciting, and part of why Matt Campbell would want to stay in Ames is because they have an opportunity to become one of those powerhouses in that conference, do they not? And you mentioned all the good things he has done throughout the years. I think the beauty part about what maybe Coach Bielema did down in Champaign that we talk a lot about here in the Quad Cities, and what Matt Campbell has done and is doing, is they don't rest on their laurels. They're not doing a parade. There's no parades in Ames because they won a bowl game against Miami. They want to continue to push to the future. And you can see Iowa State being the powerhouse or one of the powerhouses in the Big 12 conference, can't you?
Yeah, for the first time in the history of Iowa State athletics, they are on an equal playing field. There's no Texas, there's no Oklahoma that every 5 years they're pushing out rumors and they're leaking info that we're trying to get out of the Big 12. We're going to try and go to the Pac-12, try to go to the SEC. There's no Texas A&M, there's no Nebraska, which Iowa State has just never been able to compete with those schools from a talent perspective, from a money perspective. And now finally, after all these years, the Big 12 is pretty equal. Utah came in as the prohibited favorite. They've had a lot of success under Kyle Whittingham, but even they struggled year one. Oklahoma State has some good history under Mike Gundy, but they're not a powerhouse by any stretch of the mean. So you're completely right that there's a path to Iowa State being maybe not the top dog, but being one of those 4 to 5 schools that is in the mix every single year to go to a Big 12 championship. And again, you tell me that in 2016 when Matt Campbell gets hired, yeah, I'm calling you crazy. And that is what makes sticking around in Ames appealing, because he already has that formula. There's not much more work to do to climb another notch up the mountain, even though there's definitely some work.
And it's funny because sometimes you'll hear his name and NFL rumors or whatever, and they say like a young, and I know he's a younger guy still, but a younger up and coming coach. But you mentioned 2016. Jake, it's not yesterday. He's not been there for 3 years. I mean, he's getting close to a decade at a school. And in today's day and age in college football, that's staying power, isn't it? To be able to be at a school, put your culture in, and I think that's the beauty of Jamie Pollard is everybody wants instant results. And there's been some interesting years, and it didn't always just take off right away. Patience has been rewarded in Ames with Matt Campbell, has it not?
Totally. If he's at a Texas A&M or a Miami, when the Brock Purdy, Charlie Kolar, when that team came back for their senior year after the Fiesta Bowl win, so this would be the 2021 season, you lose 4 one-score games. go 7-5 when you were I think, second favorite to win the league. It was a massive disappointment. There's no way around it. And then the next year was Hunter Decker's. He was the quarterback, and the team went 4-8. There's a lot of schools around the country that would have moved on despite what Campbell accomplished 3 years ago in the COVID year. And to your point, Jamie Pollard didn't. There was the gambling stuff. A lot of departments might have moved on from a coach there. Stuck with Matt Campbell, and then about 3-4 weeks into that 2023 season, Rocco Becht proves that he is the guy. And since then, you could argue there's never been a more successful 17-18 game stretch in Iowa State football history.
And you mentioned Rocco Becht real quick. We'll talk about next year before he talks some basketball. He's back. There's some talent returning to Ames next year. And you look at the Big 12, and even when you look at the college football playoffs, and we're in the midst of the semifinals, and it's a realistic possibility. It should be a realistic goal. And I say that for Iowa and eventually even for Illinois in our viewing area. It's a realistic goal that these teams can be one of the best 12 teams and get in an Iowa State's path, while you might not be getting 2 or 3 teams from the Big 12 into the conference playoffs or the college football playoffs. They have that opportunity to own a conference and do that. Is the expectations a college football playoff next year when it comes to Iowa State?
Yeah, I think it will be amongst the fan base. You lose your 2 best receivers, and you could argue your 2 best players overall, but you bring back the most important position in Rocco Becht. Yeah. And you also are bringing in 2 pretty high-level transfer receivers that might not completely fill the void that Higgins and Noel leave, but they'll definitely soften the blow quite a bit. And with enough experience returning on the defensive side of the ball, the expectation will be to be back in the mix to get to Arlington. And as we saw this year, 10-2 doesn't necessarily guarantee you, because nobody knows how the big conference tiebreakers work.
Yeah.
But I do think the expectation will be to get back to that game just like they were last year. And I know the game against Arizona State didn't necessarily go their way, but a couple plays here and there in the first half, take away a couple turnovers, it could have been a much closer game that could have come down to the wire. And we saw it 4 times this year. If Iowa State goes down to the wire in a game, Rocco Becht more often than not can win you the game on a game-winning drive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's flip to basketball, because sometimes if you have a really good football season, you just leave yourself like, man, it's going to be a long off season to get to the fall again. But that's not the case in Ames. The Hilton's rocking as it always is. Iowa State ranked 3rd right now. Most likely will move up because of Tennessee losing, but they got to do their work this weekend and all that kind of stuff. But big picture this for me. How good is this Iowa State basketball team? There's been some good ones in recent years, and Sweet 16s and Elite, all that kind of stuff. How good can this team be?
It's the best Iowa State basketball team that I've ever seen. I wasn't around for the 2000 and 2001 teams. I've watched the highlights, and I'm not going to put it up there with the Pfizer and Tinsley team yet, because they went to an Elite 8. They won back-to-back regular season Big 12 championships. But as far as my lifetime that I've gotten to watch with my own eyes, this is the best Iowa State team that I've seen. And they are good enough to win a national championship. Of course, those are really, really high expectations. And any fan putting the expectation of a national championship or bust in the NCAA tournament are crazy. But I do think it's fair to say Final Four bust at this point. They are one possession away from being undefeated, and the loss was to who I think is the best team in the country in Auburn. The defense is still the same defense from years past, but the offense has spiked up to a level where you could argue the offense is performing better than the defense, where 2 years ago you were just relying on on 2 or 3 guys. If one of them could score 25, you'd have a chance to win the game. But other than that, you were trying to hold guys to 50, 55 points on the other side. That's not the case anymore. And that's what's so impressive to me about what TJ Otzelberger's done, because he's brought in these high-level scorers, Keyshawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, Taman Lipsy, Milan Momcilovic. These guys can all go for 20, 25 on any given night, but they're still playing like junkyard dogs that have to play this type of defense to be on the floor. And that's what I think makes them so dangerous once March rolls around.
You mentioned Final Four bust, and it is a Final Four team in my eyes. How much do you want to maybe pump the brakes or caution fans to enjoy the ride? Because when you have seasons like this, there is Big 12 games, conference tournaments, all those kind of things. Yes, that's out there, and we can talk about it because that's what we get to do. But it should be a special January, February, March, and Iowa State fans are getting used to this kind of thing where they enjoy going to Kansas City and winning conference championships and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is what makes January and February bearable. That living in Iowa forever, we both know this. The winter is miserable, and when you have 2 college basketball games a week for your favorite team, 4 between the women's and men's, that gives you something to look forward to on a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night when it gets dark at 4:30. And yeah, I would tell Iowa State fans, enjoy every bit of it, because they haven't won a Big 12 regular season title since 2001. Big 12 tournament titles are fun. They're a blast. But it's a lot easier to win a Big 12 tournament than it is to do it over the course of a now 20-game season. So as much as a Final Four should be the expectation, so should a Big 12 regular season championship, because those banners mean a heck of a lot too. They haven't lost at Hilton since the end of the 2022 season. That's another thing the team takes pride in. So KU's coming to town next week. Yeah. There's so many marquee games throughout the year that it is a lot more about the journey, the games where you're maybe just a 3-point favorite on the road in Morgantown and you pull out a win. It's so much more about that. And then once the NCAA tournament gets there, you just hope they've got it every night and the bracket breaks their way in somewhat of a favorable way.
You mentioned Kansas next week. They come to Hilton. That place will be rocking. I'm assuming you'll have a front row seat for that. This weekend, They go to Texas Tech. So it's a road game, maybe that weird game before, looking ahead. But the Big 12's loaded. It's a gauntlet. I think they go to West Virginia after they host Kansas, and that'll be an interesting one with a familiar face at West Virginia, a couple familiar faces at West Virginia. So while, like I said, that Final Four is there, they got a bunch of great marquee matchups for fans to get excited about starting Wednesday.
Yeah, it's the toughest 3-game stretch of the season, I think. Texas Tech, they're not ranked. They don't have the number next to their name, but by all the analytics, they are, I think, one of the 5 best teams in the league. They've got Darian Williams, who's a top 10 player in college basketball. He was actually heavily recruited out of the transfer portal 2 years ago. And when Iowa State struck out on him, they got Kurt Jones. So there's some familiarity there between them and their best player. And Lubbock is always a house of horrors for Iowa State. That is a tough place to play, no matter who's there, no matter what day of the week it is. But when the team coming in has a number 3 next to their name, that place will be on fire. And outside of Auburn, I'd say that's probably the toughest test that Iowa State has had so far this year. I'd put that even over a home game against Marquette. So that stretch, I'd maybe even argue, as crazy as it sounds, Kansas at home might be the easiest game of that 3-game stretch. And that, I know that sounds crazy, but it's a tough three-game stretch.
Jake, I like to gamble. That, as a gambler, is the most intriguing one to me. In fact, now that you talked about Texas Tech, I'm curious what that line will be, because that's a sleepy, tough game. You mentioned to go down to Texas Tech and play, but yeah, I would agree. When the Holton's rocking on a Wednesday night, and Kansas has shown they're not Kansas of old. So it'll be a great, interesting way this thing plays out in the Big 12. Before we let you go, you have a familiar face in the Quad Cities up there leading that women's basketball program like he has for decades. Bill Fenley, Iowa State lost a couple games in state earlier this year, but when it comes to women's basketball in this state, it's a really good state. There's 4 very talented programs. Where's Iowa State at right now? And when it be all said and done, Bill Fenley is going to have those ladies playing some really good basketball come the postseason.
Yeah, so I want to talk about those UConn and South Carolina losses. Go out there and humiliating. I'm sure Fenley would say that. I'm sure the team would say that. And I think Caitlin Clark gave us a bit of a false hope that the playing field in women's college basketball has evened out, because I'm sure it has a little bit, but it takes a lot to go up against teams like that. And I think Iowa State learned that the hard way. They gave themselves a really tough non-conference schedule. And while they certainly took their bruises, like really, really, really took their bruises, I do think it'll make them better in the long run. A lot of people don't realize this because they brought back almost their whole freshman class from last year. They're actually younger this season than they were last season because of the amount of freshmen now that are playing and the young transfers they brought in. So I do think that this is a team that you'll see at the end of February making a run when they host K-State, West Virginia, TCU, 3 top 25 teams. I think this team will be in a better spot against those tough teams because of how tough their non-con was and how tough that non-con went for a lot of those games. They played Iowa tough. They probably should have won that game. They didn't play well down the stretch, and they lost to a solid UNI team. But I think all of that will hopefully make that end of February a little more fruitful.
Yeah, and Bill Fenley teams always get better throughout the year. That's one thing I love, is they usually are playing the best basketball towards the end of the season. And you mentioned it, and it's not a popular take, but Caitlin Clark wasn't a generational talent. And you're seeing it in Iowa City. They lost to Illinois last night, and it's still a really good basketball team. Like, the Iowa women's basketball team is a very good basketball team, but fans, I should say, and not just Iowa fans, but fans around the state, around the Midwest, around the country, kind of got spoiled for 2-3 years when Caitlin Clark was doing generational stuff that we won't see often throughout our lifetime. So generational, speaking of generational, Jake Brend, the fastest rising name in sports in the state of Iowa. I appreciate you doing this. I'm going to bug you every so often, if that's okay.
Oh, it's not bugging. Feel free.
Awesome. He's Jake Brend. Check his stuff out. Plug the stuff again, the podcast, and then obviously his stuff at WOI. But plug the podcast one more time.
Yep. Check out everything at weareiowa.com for everything at Local 5, all the stories about Central Iowa, and then iowaeverywhere.com. Iowa Everywhere on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. You can check out all the good stuff over at Iowa Everywhere.
Fantastic. Hey, tell Raina and all those knuckleheads in that market I said hello. Will you do?
Oh, I will.
Awesome. Thank you. He is Jake Brend. We got a lot more to get to. You're watching Off the Air on a snowy Friday here in the Quad Cities. We will be right back.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. A snowy Friday. We are wrapping things up. Went a little long. I was worried I couldn't do 2 hours, and we're 2 hours and 10 minutes in, but I want to thank all our guests. I definitely want to thank Andrew Lehman and the beautiful gift, the John Deere Classic tee marker, a legendary tee marker in the world of golf. So that was very, very cool. Before we let you go, we mentioned Charles Jugusal and Notre Dame at the top of the show. Notre Dame winning last night over Penn State 27-24. Charles, who had a season-ending pectoral muscle to start the season, back ready to play, and had to get into the game yesterday, playing at guard, second game in college, and he's a tackle, so he moved from guard to tackle, from tackle to guard. Pro Football Focus has 0 pressures allowed by Charles Jugusal in 25 pass block opportunities. So he was simply flawless last night for Notre Dame as they will get ready to play for a national championship coming up a week from Monday. So we will continue to keep our eye on Charles Jugusal, hopefully get him on the podcast after he maybe wins himself a national championship at Notre Dame. Don't forget that the other national semifinal game is tonight with Texas and Ohio State going head-to-head. We'll talk about that on Monday. Also, a big weekend of NFL playoff football. So we'll have plenty of that, plus a lot more to get to coming up on week 2 of Off the Air. I want to thank everyone for supporting me during this first week of the show. As I mentioned, Andrew Lehman in today. Also want to thank Casey Kreiter and Jake Brend. Again, I want to thank Andrew for all the gifts that he brought me. That was fantastic. Want to thank everybody throughout the week. I got my list. Let me grab it. My list, and I have some that I've left off, but the 3 today, we also had Pat Anger, Cole Rusk, Jess Settles, Chasen Randall, Julian Vandervelde, Jay Kidwell, Tom Kakert, Johnny Marks. Plenty of great guests for week 1. We hope to continue that trend as we get ready for week number 2. I also want to encourage you, if you talk to somebody this weekend and you mention the show, have them subscribe. We're up over 500 subscribers right now. We want to continue to grow that number as we continue to build something hopefully pretty fun and pretty special here in the Quad Cities. So once again, thanks so much for watching this entire week, and we'll be back on Monday with a brand new week of shows. Have a great weekend, Quad Cities.